On the isolated, jagged cliffs of Eilean Mòr, a colossal stone lighthouse stands against the roaring black void of the North Sea, its brilliant lens throwing long, rhythmic beams of white light into a frozen December night in Motnin Chan. Inside, keepers tend to a massive, rotating crystal lens, blissfully unaware that these quiet, repetitive hours will be their absolute last, before vanishing from the face of the earth forever. This is the serene, untold story of their final vigil, a moment suspended in time, right on the edge of one of maritime history's deepest, most enduring mysteries. Hello, my friend. Mott, I'm so glad you have found your way to this quiet space tonight. Let us take a deep, slow breath together, and let the heavy burdens of the modern world gently slip away from your shoulders. Adjust your pillow until it feels perfectly supportive. Pull that warm blanket just a little bit closer around your shoulders, and allow your body to sink fully into the soft comfort of your bed. There is absolutely nothing else you need to do tonight, nowhere else you need to be. Just listen to the steady, calm rhythm of my voice as we step away from the noise of today. We are travelling back in time, far from the rushing pace of the present, to the lonely, wind-swept Flannan Isles off the rugged western coast of Scotland. The date is the 14th of December, 1900. A dense, freezing fog from the North Sea has completely wrapped itself around the solitary island of Eilean Mòr, isolating it entirely from the rest of humanity. Outside, the great Atlantic Ocean crashes violently against the jagged cliffs far below, but here, inside the massive stone tower, you are wrapped in a safe, warm and impenetrable sanctuary. You are the assistant lightkeeper, and you are slowly, methodically climbing the 160 spiral stone steps toward the lantern room. Your heavy leather boots make a dull, rhythmic sound against the cold granite, echoing softly in the narrow, curved stairwell. With every single step you take, the damp chill of the ocean fades further away, replaced by the comforting, heavy aroma of burning rapeseed oil drifting down from above. Your fingers brush along the solid iron handrail, feeling its smooth, cold texture beneath your palm, a grounding sensation that reminds you of the sheer strength of this building. The air inside the shaft is still, thick with the faint scent of old stone, damp wool, and the subtle clean tang of metal polish. You look up into the endless spiral of the staircase, where the golden light from the upper levels casts long, lazy shadows that dance across the rough-hewn stone walls. There is a profound, comforting isolation here. The world below has dissolved into the dark mist, leaving only the slow, deliberate rhythm of your ascent. Each step is a gentle release, an intentional movement that slows your pulse and eases your mind into a state of absolute calm. As we begin this quiet vigil together, remember that this journey with whispers of centuries is a work of creative historical narrative, constructed solely for entertainment, relaxation, and educational purposes. While every detail is deeply rooted in verified archives, certain scenes and atmospheres to provide an immersive auditory experience. Experience one for your rest. Reaching the final landing of the spiral staircase, your boots press against the last stone step, which feels slightly smoother and colder than the ones below. Ahead of you sits the heavy, solid oak door, heavily reinforced with thick bands of weathered brass to shield the room from the relentless, corrosive salt air of the North Sea. Your hand, resting on the iron rail, reaches out to find the smooth, heavy brass handle. As you grasp it, you feel the faint, rhythmic vibrations of the entire lighthouse tower hum through the metal and into your palm. It is a deep, comforting frequency, the steady heartbeat of a structure built to withstand the greatest forces of nature. With a slow, deliberate pressure, you push down on the latch, hearing a satisfyingly heavy, metallic click echo softly against the stone walls. The door swings inward with a slow, solemn weight, revealing the inner sanctum of the lantern room. Immediately, a wave of dense, concentrated warmth rushes out to greet you, gently enveloping your face and chest after the long, cool ascent. The air up here is thick and deeply comforting, saturated with the rich, distinct aroma of vaporized rapeseed oil that has been burning steadily for hours. Underneath that dominant scent, there is the clean metallic tang of hot brass, the faint sweet trace of beeswax used to polish the instrument cases, and the subtle, earthy note of dry wool drying near the small iron stove. You step across the threshold, and the heavy oak door swings shut behind you, with a dull, muted thud that seals you away from the rest of the world. In this very moment, you are completely cut off from the tumultuous sea, nestled inside a safe, glowing capsule 30 meters above the jagged black rocks of Eilean Mòr. The space is circular, cozy, and profoundly intimate, a tiny island of human warmth suspended between the dark ocean and the empty sky. You take a few quiet steps across the polished tongue and groove wooden floorboards, which give off a faint, reassuring creak under your weight. All around you, massive curved glass panes, nearly an inch thick, form a transparent wall that separates this warm haven from the pitch-black void of the Scottish night. Looking through the glass, you cannot see the water below, only the absolute velvety darkness of the Atlantic, stretching out into infinity on the outer side of the glass. The freezing sea spray leaves tiny, crystalline tracks of salt that catch the light, while on the inside, a delicate mist of condensation forms along the bottom edges of the iron frames. The glass feels icy cold if you place your fingertips near it, but just a few inches back, the air remains perfectly warm, heated by the magnificent, steady flame at the center of the room. Warmed, you stand still for a moment, letting your eyes adjust to the unique interplay of shadow and light, feeling the absolute security of this high, isolated nest. Every element of this room is designed for meticulous, repetitive order, a quiet testament to the discipline of the lightkeepers, who call this lonely rock home. To your right, a small dark stained oak desk is tucked neatly against the curved wall, its surface holding a heavy brass barometer, a marine chronometer ticking with an invisible, microscopic precision, and the leather-bound logbook waiting for your entries. A simple wooden chair with a high back sits empty, its seat worn smooth by years of quiet vigils. The ambient sound in the room is not the roar of the wind, but a collection of small, rhythmic, domestic noises. The soft, wet hiss of the pressurized oil lamp, the steady, rhythmic ticking of the clockwork mechanism, and the low, comforting rumble of the small coal stove in the corner. Here, in this peaceful sanctuary, the chaotic forces of nature are transformed into a predictable, soothing routine, allowing your mind to rest in the safety of absolute predictability. Because in the soft amber glow of the lantern room, the principal lightkeeper sits quietly at the oak desk, his weathered face illuminated by the steady flame of a small brass reading lamp. He does not speak right away, respecting the sacred stillness that envelopes the tower during these late-night hours. Instead, he simply looks up as you step into the room, his eyes meeting yours with a calm, understanding gaze. A slow, gentle nod passes between you, a silent language shared by men who spend their lives guarding the edge of the world. This simple gesture carries the entire weight of the watch transition, a peaceful passing of responsibility from one pair of watchful eyes to another. Nor he begins to rise from his wooden chair, his movements unhurried and deliberate, his heavy wool trousers making a soft rustling sound against the wood. He reaches for his steaming mug of tea, the ceramic base scraping faintly against the desk surface, sending a fresh, earthy aroma into the warm air. to mingle with the scent of rapeseed oil. You walk over to take his place, feeling the residual warmth left on the smooth wooden seat of the chair. As you settle in, the principal lightkeeper walks toward the small iron stove, lifting a heavy iron kettle to add a splash of hot water to his mug. The sound of the water trickling is crisp and metallic, a small domestic comfort in this high isolated room. He turns back to look at the massive rotating lens one last time, checking its steady pace with a practiced, instinctive glance. Everything is in perfect, meticulous order. Satisfied, he walks quietly toward the inner door that leads down to the living quarters below. His hand rests briefly on the polished brass knob, and with the door behind him with a soft, cushioned click. Now you are truly alone with the great light. The silence that settles over the room is not empty. It is full of the rhythmic, mechanical life of the lighthouse, a comforting cocoon of sound that protects you from the vast, most dark emptiness of the Atlantic. As you settle into the quiet rhythm of your watch, adjusting your posture against the high back of the wooden chair, you realize how precious these undisturbed moments of solitude truly are. In the modern world, such stillness is rare, but here, time stretches out like the dark ocean below. If you find comfort in this deep, unhurried peace, you might gently consider subscribing to Whispers of Centuries. Taking a quiet moment to join our community ensures that you will always find a safe, dark sanctuary waiting for you, a place where you can return night after night to let your mind drift into a restful, restorative sleep. It is a simple, effortless way to claim your own space of quietude before the night closes in. You rest your forearms on the cool, smooth surface of the oak desk, feeling the solid wood beneath your skin. On the desk lies the leather-bound logbook, its heavy pages slightly curled at the corners from the ambient humidity of the sea. The inkwell, made of thick dark green glass, sits open, reflecting a tiny dancing spark of amber light from the main burner above. You reach out to touch the smooth, cold glass of the inkwell, grounding yourself in the physical reality of your duties. The principal lightkeeper has left the last entry neat and precise, a row of elegant, slanting cursive numbers recording the barometric pressure from 3 hours ago. Your task now is simply to wait, to observe, and to let the steady, unchanging machinery of the tower guide you through the long, peaceful hours until the dawn breaks. The time has come to perform the first physical ritual of your watch, a simple, repetitive task that keeps the great light burning steadily through the freezing fog. You stand up from the wooden chair, feeling the cool air of the room's lower perimeter drop away as you step closer to the radiant core of the lantern room. At the center of the space sits the massive brass pedestal supporting the lamp, and tucked neatly into a recessed alcove beneath it is the primary oil reservoir. To replenish it, you must use the heavy polished red copper jug that rests on a low bench nearby. As your fingers wrap around the thick, hand-forged copper handle, you feel the substantial weight of the metal, cold at first, but rapidly absorbing the ambient warmth of the room. You lift the jug, hearing the soft, heavy sloshing of the rapeseed oil inside, a thick, viscous sound that promises long, slow burning. You carry the jug over to the supply barrel, a massive oak cask bound with black iron hoops that sits against the curved wall. The wooden tap of the casks is dark and stained from years of careful use. You place the copper jug beneath the spout and slowly turn the wooden valve. For a brief second there is absolute silence, and then a beautiful rich sound fills the quiet room. A thick golden ribbon of rapeseed oil begins to flow. It pours with an incredible smoothness, completely silent at first, before turning into a low, deep, rhythmic glugging sound as it fills the copper container. The oil is pale yellow, translucent, and incredibly clean, carrying a faint, earthy aroma reminiscent of crushed seeds and summer fields, a scent that feels entirely out of place, yet deeply comforting up here in the frozen North Sea. You watch the liquid rise slowly, millimetre by millimetre, reflecting the golden glow of the overhead flame in its glossy, unruffled surface. When the oil reaches the inner brass rim of the jug, you turn the wooden valve back. With a firm, deliberate twist, cutting off the flow without a single dropped spill, you lift the full jug, its weight now heavy and grounding in your arms, requiring a slow, balanced stride as you walk back to the central pedestal. The air grows noticeably warmer as you approach the burner, the heat radiating outward in gentle, rhythmic waves. You locate the filler cap on the main brass reservoir, a large threaded disc worn smooth by the grip of countless lightkeepers before you. You unscrew it slowly, the brass threads making a dry, metallic scraping sound that cuts softly through the steady hiss of the lamp. Setting the cap down on a clean wool cloth, you lift the copper jug and tilt its spout over the dark opening. The oil flows out in a heavy, continuous stream, disappearing into the dark belly of the lamp mechanism. You listen closely to the changing pitch of the sound as the reservoir fills, a deep, resonant hollow tone that gradually rises in frequency, becoming higher and softer as the liquid approaches the top. The smell of the oil intensifies slightly as it enters the warm brass chamber, a clean, rich scent that blankets the room in an atmosphere of absolute safety and domestic order. This simple act of measurement and replenishment, requiring your full but quiet attention, filtering out any stray thoughts of the wider world. There is only the oil, the copper, the brass, and the steady, unhurried passage of time. You stand perfectly still, maintaining the steady tilt of your arms, completely surrendered to the glamorous chore of this necessary, unglamorous chore. With the oil reservoir safely replenished, you step back and turn your eyes upward to gaze at the true heart of the tower, the magnificent towering structure of the Fresnel lens summer. Summer standing over 2 meters tall and weighing a monumental 2 tons, this massive apparatus of pure French crystal glass dominates the center of the room. It is not a single, solid sheet of glass, but a breathtaking, intricate assembly prisms, each one hand-cut, polished to absolute perfection, and held together by a delicate, web-like framework of gleaming brass. The prisms are arranged in concentric rings, forming a series of giant curved steps that rise toward the ceiling like a frozen glass whirlpool. As the lens slowly revolves, the amber light from the central burner catches the edge of each individual prism, breaking the single flame into a brilliant cascade of soft, dancing reflections that glide effortlessly across your skin and the curved walls of the room. What makes this massive 2-ton mountain of crystal move with such effortless grace is a triumph of 19th century engineering. The entire apparatus does not rest on traditional wheels or bearings, which would create friction and noise. Instead, it floats. It is suspended perfectly within a circular trough filled with liquid mercury, a dense silver metal so heavy and thick that the colossal weight of the glass and brass becomes completely balanced flawlessly on a metallic cushion. You step closer to the base of the pedestal, leaning down slightly to observe the narrow gap where the dark, reflective surface of the mercury is visible. It looks like a ring of polished, liquid silver, perfectly still, completely flat, and entirely unbothered by the storm raging outside the thick tower walls. There is an unsettling beauty to this liquid metal, a silent, heavy element that completely eliminates the friction of the world, allowing a massive monument of glass to spin with the gentle push of a single finger. You place your hand gently on the outer brass frame of the pedestal, feeling no vibration, no grinding, and absolutely no resistance. The lens turns in complete majestic silence, a silence so profound that it feels almost sacred. As you watch, one of the massive bullseye panels of the lens passes directly in front of you. It is a huge, thick disc of solid crystal, curved like a giant teardrop, designed to collect the scattered rays of the oil flame and compress them into a single, intensely focused beam of white light that can pierce through 30 miles of dark ocean mist. The glass is so pure that as it passes, it momentarily distorts the shape of the room behind it, melting the dark shadows into long fluid lines before they appear back into place. The repetitive, unchanging movement of these massive glass panels creates slow, predictable dance of light and glass that seems to slow down your own breathing. You stand there in the warm center of the tower, completely mesmerized by the flawless perfection of the machinery. Every 30 seconds, a new panel of crystal sweeps past your field of vision, bringing with it a subtle shift in the air, a faint, warm breeze stirred by the gentle movement of the glass. The light does not flash or startle, it glides. It is a lazy, beautiful sweep of light that has been doing the exact same thing, hour after hour, night after night, since the day the lighthouse was first lit. In this high, warm sanctuary, surrounded by the vast emptiness of the North Sea, you find a deep, comforting sense of security in this absolute predictability. The outside world may be chaotic, unpredictable, and full of noise, but here, inside the lens room, everything obeys the laws of perfect geometry and smooth, frictionless motion. You close your eyes for just a brief second, letting the ambient warmth of the crystal core wash over your face, listening to the deep, silent hum of a world perfectly at rest. Leaving the central pedestal, your eyes travel downward to the heavy cast-iron apparatus, where the intricate mechanical heartbeat of the lighthouse lives. The lighthouse lives, tucked safely inside a glass-panelled case to protect it from dust and floating particles of soot. The magnificent clockwork mechanism operates with a mesmerizing mathematical precision. You lean in slightly, resting your hands on your knees to watch the endless dance of the interlocking wheels. The system is an exquisite network of polished brass gears and hand-cut iron teeth, each one perfectly matched to its neighbor, a heavy weight suspended on a thick steel cable that drops deep into the darkness of the central tower shaft, provides the constant, downward gravitational force that drives this entire world of movement, and, as the cables slowly drive wheel, which passes its energy through a sequence of smaller, faster gears, magnifying the force until it matches the exact speed required to rotate the 2-ton lens above. The gears are covered in a thin, glistening sheen of clear machine oil, which completely cushions the contact between the metal surfaces, transforming what could be a harsh, grinding noise into a soft, liquid whisper. Through the glass pane, you can hear the beautiful hypnotic rhythm of the deadbeat escapement. Click-clack, click-clack, click-clack. It is an incredibly steady, unhurried cadence that completely fills the lower half of the lantern room. Each click is the sound of a hardened steel pallet, releasing a single tooth of the escape wheel, allowing the machinery to advance by a fraction of a millimeter. Each clack is the sound of the opposite pallet catching the wheel, locking it in place for a precise, measured second. This repetitive, soothing dialogue has its own ancient, soothing poetry. It tells you that time out here on the lonely rock of Eilean Mòr does not rush or fly. It moves with a heavy, deliberate dignity, one single second at a time. You focus your gaze on the smallest gear in the train, a tiny brass pinion spinning rapidly compared to the slow, majestic rotation of the main wheel. the light from the central flame dances across the spinning teeth, creating a continuous golden blur that looks almost like liquid light trapped within the mechanism. The absolute predictability of this sound acts as a gentle anchor for your mind, drawing your awareness away from the vast, unpredictable darkness of the North Sea and focusing it entirely within this warm, mechanical refuge. You reach out and place your palm against the outer iron casing of the clockwork box, feeling the incredibly subtle rhythmic thrum of the gears working inside. It is a faint, comforting vibration that matches the steady pulse of your own resting heart. The oil-slicked gears continue their endless, perfect calculations, entirely indifferent to the freezing fog that presses against the thick glass windows just a few feet away. We're cozy. In this space, every single piece of metal knows its exact purpose, executing its duty hour after hour without variance or hesitation. There is a profound sense of safety in witnessing such absolute order. The continuous click-clack of the escapement creates a safe, predictable boundary around your thoughts, whispering that everything is exactly as it should be, will continue to turn, that the light will continue to turn, and that you are completely protected within this fortress of stone and brass. So, as you watch these mechanical movements, and let the soothing rhythm of the gears settle deep into your consciousness, it brings a deep sense of reassurance to know that this content was AI tools with the assistance of advanced AI tools and has been meticulously reviewed, verified, and edited by the editorial team at Whispers of Centuries. Every word has been crafted with the utmost care to preserve your peace of mind, with all rights reserved to ensure your night remains completely undisturbed. Until next time, listen closely to the whispers of the past, because you never know what timeless wisdom might quietly find its way into your night. You step away from the ticking clockwork box, your eyes in following the brilliant beam of light as it cuts through the warm air of the room, to ensure that not a single ray of this vital light is dimmed or scattered by the inevitable buildup of carbon soot. You must perform but gentle meditative oil from meditative task. You walk over to a small wall-mounted wooden cabinet made of dark, oil-stained pine. When you open its small door, the quiet creak of the iron hinges is a familiar, comforting sound. Inside, stacked with perfect, military neatness, are several pieces of genuine chamois leather. You reach out and select a large, supple piece of the treated skin. It feels incredibly soft and velvety against your bare skin, yet it has a substantial, reassuring thickness. The leather carries a faint, clean scent of natural oils and old workshop shelves, a completely grounding aroma that centers your thoughts inside this safe haven. Holding the soft leather cloth in your hand, you slowly approach the inner glass shield that protects the main burner mechanism. The heat radiating from the glass is intense but pleasant, wrapping around your hands and chest like a warm embrace on a freezing winter night. You fold the leather cloth neatly into a thick, square pad, pressing it flat against the warm, curved surface of the glass. As you begin to move your hand in slow, deliberate, circular motions, a distinct and soothing sound fills the room, a soft, rhythmic rustling, a gentle, repetitive whisper of friction. It is the sound of clean, dry leather, gently removing the microscopically thin film of grey soot that has settled on the glass over the last few hours. With every slow pass of your arm, the glass regains its absolute, diamond-like clarity. You can see the pale, misty haze vanishing before your eyes, leaving behind a surface so perfectly transparent that the bright flame inside seems to float naked in the middle of the room. As you lose yourself in the steady circular rhythm of your hand, moving with an unhurried grace that matches the turning of the lens above, you might find your mind entering a state of beautiful undisturbed tranquility. This quiet act of maintenance, done far from the eyes of the world, is much like the gentle care we must give to our own minds before rest. If this peaceful atmosphere is helping you find your own clarity tonight, please take a soft, effortless moment to leave a like on this video. Woven into your evening as a quiet gesture, your gentle support helps Whispers of Centuries remain a steady, bright beacon for weary souls less seeking suns. From the stormy noise of the modern world, it is a simple way to protect this peaceful space we are building together. You continue your work, shifting your position slightly to reach the upper sections of the glass shield. Your arm moves up and down in a lazy, predictable cadence, the soft friction of the leather, producing a gentle, warming sensation in your muscles. Through the thick, protective layer of the chamois, you can feel the deep, steady heat of the lamp glass, a warmth that seems to seep into your bones and drive away the last lingering traces of the cold Atlantic fog. The contrast is profound. Outside, a freezing, hostile world of dark water and ice-cold mist. Inside, a silent worker using a soft piece of leather to perfect a masterpiece of light. You watch the clean glass reflect the intricate brass web of the lens mechanism, creating a beautiful miniature universe of golden lines that dance and shift with every breath you take. When every square inch of the glass is pristine, you lower your arm, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction done, as the room continues to hum simple job with its timeless, mechanical peace. You carefully fold the soft chamois leather cloth and place it back, letting the small wooden door click shut with a quiet, satisfying snap. Stepping back into the center of the lantern room, you allow yourself to fully immerse in this lonely rhythm that defines this lonely sanctuary. Every 30 seconds, with absolute mathematical precision, the giant bull's eye panel of the Fresnel lens aligns perfectly with the central burner, sending a magnificent, brilliant beam of pure white light sweeping through the room. It passes over the polished wooden floors, glides across the brass instruments on the desk, and bathes your entire body in a brief warm glow before moving onward. This regular alternation between bright illumination and soft, amber shadow creates a deeply hypnotic cadence, a steady visual lullaby that seems to rock the entire room in a gentle, predictable cradle of time. You stand completely still, letting the light wash over your closed eyelids every half-minute, feeling the peaceful, unhurried passing of the winter night. Outside the thick glass panes, the sweeping beam cuts a dramatic path through the dense, freezing fog of the North Sea. For a fleeting second, the light illuminates the thick, swirling mist, turning the heavy air into a glowing, ethereal wall of silver and white, before moving out to search the vast, empty face of the dark Atlantic. The contrast is utterly mesmerizing. One moment the world outside the lighthouse is an impenetrable void of grey frost, and the next it is pierced by a magnificent sword of light, a timeless symbol of human guidance cast out into the wilderness. You watch the dust motes suspended in the warm air of the room as the beam passes through them. They look like millions of tiny drifting stars, caught for a brief moment in a golden current before fading back into the comfortable, dark warmth of the shadows. Inside the lantern room, the effect of this spinning light is profoundly soothing. As the 2-ton crystal lens rotates silently on its frictionless bed of liquid mercury, the heavy iron frames of the glass windows cast long, dark shadows that travel lazily around the curved perimeter of the tower. These shadows move like giant, slow-moving clock hands, sliding smoothly across the floorboards, climbing up the curved granite walls, and crossing over the surface of your oak desk before dissolving into the background. You track a single shadow as it begins its journey near the small iron stove. It glides past the warm kettle, inches over the leather-bound logbook, and gently wraps your resting hands in darkness before the next wave of light returns. This continuous circular movement creates a powerful sense of enclosure. You are sitting at the absolute center of a spinning wheel of protection, safe from the chaotic forces of the world outside. You breathe in slowly, deliberately matching the rise and fall of your chest to the 30-second cycle of the turning lens. In, as the brilliant light sweeps past, out, as the comforting shadow returns. The air feels remarkably heavy and warm now, the steady heat of the oil burner acting as a gentle weight that coaxes to grow heavier with each passing cycle, each boulder. The constant, unchanging sequence of light, shadow, warmth, and rhythm completely isolates your mind from the rest of the world. The vast, stormy ocean below becomes nothing more than a distant, muffled whisper, a background frequency to emphasize the profound security of your high stone sanctuary, of your high... In this space, there are no sudden disruptions, no unexpected demands, and no noise. There is only the beautiful, lazy rhythm of the turning glass, keeping what come untold, mind toward a deep, untroubled state of rest. You slowly walk toward the outer perimeter of the lantern room, where the massive, curved glass window panes form a strong protective wall against the elements. Each sheet of glass is nearly an inch thick, engineered specifically to withstand the brutal pressure of winter gales. As you stand just a few inches from the glass, you can see a delicate pattern of condensation forming along the bottom of the iron frame, tiny droplets of moisture gathering and slowly trailing downward in thin, lazy lines. On the outside of the glass, the relentless sea spray has left behind a fine white crust of salt crystals. These tiny crystals catch the sweeping beam of the lens every 30 seconds, glowing like miniature diamonds for a brief moment before fading back into the dark. If you place your fingertips a mere inch away from the glass, you can feel the intense, biting cold of the Scottish winter pressing hard from the other side, yet it cannot penetrate this fortress. Inside you are completely shielded, wrapped in a blanket of absolute warmth and security. Looking out into the great void, the North Sea has completely vanished beneath a blanket of dense, freezing fog. It is an impenetrable wall of heavy, silent grey, rolling and tumbling in slow motion through the darkness. The fog seems to press directly against the window panes, like a quiet, ghostly sea of vapour, curious about the bright flame burning within the tower. Every 30 seconds, the magnificent beam of white light cuts through this grey mass, illuminating the microscopic droplets of moisture, and creating a brilliant, glowing tunnel that stretches out into the dark. You watch the mist twist and curl within the light, performing a slow return swallows it whole. The vast Atlantic Ocean, which you know lies 30 metres directly below the rugged cliffs of Eilean Mòr, is completely invisible. There is no horizon, no sky, and no sea. There is only the thick protective shell of the lighthouse and the endless, silent mist. This absolute blindness to the outside world only deepens the profound sense of safety within your high sanctuary. You are suspended in the air, high above the jagged rocks, nestled inside a warm golden ken that the cold cannot touch. The air in the room remains thick and comfortable, carrying the familiar, heavy perfume of the burning rapeseed lamp and the faint, woody warmth of the coal stove. The fierce winds of the Atlantic may howl through the stone crags below, but by the time the sound reaches this height, filtered through 2 meters of solid granite and thick plate glass, it is reduced to nothing more than a low melodic murmur. It sounds like a distant rhythmic breathing, a deep, natural lullaby provided by the earth itself. You lean your shoulder gently against the solid iron frame of the window, feeling its rigid, unyielding strength. You are completely safe, completely detached from the chaos of the natural world, resting in a space where time is measured only by the steady, unhurried ticking of the clockwork and the lazy, beautiful spin of the glass. You turn away from the outer window panes, leaving the icy darkness of the North Sea behind, and step back into the deep, amber embrace of the room's interior. Your heavy boots fall softly on the tongue-and-groove floorboards as you make your way toward the small, dark, stained granite wall, tucked neatly into the curve of the massive granite wall. This desk is a true anchor of domestic familiarity in this vast, watery wilderness. Its surface is beautifully worn, polished smooth by the forearms and wrists of exactly where you of lightkeepers, who have sat exactly where you are sitting now. Under the steady, warm glow of the brass reading lamp, the rich grain of the old oak shows deep lines of dark brown and gold, telling a silent story of decades of faithful service. You pull out the high-backed wooden chair, its legs sliding over the floorboards with a low, muffled scrape that is immediately swallowed by the steady, comforting hiss of the main burner. As you sit down, you feel the solid, unyielding support of the oak frame, allowing your entire body to sink into a posture of relaxed, peaceful readiness. On the desk sits the heavy official logbook of the Northern Lighthouse Board. It is a monumental volume, bound in thick, dark calfskin leather that has grown supple and rich from years of constant handling. The corners of the leather cover are slightly scuffed, revealing the pale, soft fibres beneath the dark stain, and a faint, comforting aroma of animal oils and old archives drifts up from its surface. You lay your hands flat on the cover, feeling the gentle, uneven texture of the natural hide. It is cool to the touch at first, but it rapidly absorbs the warmth of your palms. This book holds the quiet daily history of Eilean Mòr. Every passing storm, every drop of oil consumed, every distant ship sighted, and every clear sunrise recorded in the neat disciplines raised in service to the sea, who spent their lives in service to the sea. It is a record of absolute order in a world of natural chaos. Before you open the heavy cover to begin your own record of this silent night, you might take a quiet moment to notice how beautifully still your mind has become in this isolated room. In the busy, overwhelming rush of the modern world, it is so easy to lose touch with these moments of pure, uninterrupted presence. If you are feeling a deep sense of comfort and safety in this high sanctuary tonight, you might consider taking a gentle moment to subscribe to Whispers of Centuries, the call, or perhaps leave a soft comment to share where you are listening from. Woven naturally into your evening routine, this quiet gesture helps support our channel, ensuring that this pew whenever the world grows too loud, and waiting for you whenever the world grows too loud. It is a simple, beautiful way to protect your rest and claim your space of quietude before the night closes in. You slowly lift the heavy leather cover of the logbook, the spine of the volume, making a soft, dry creak as it opens to the current week. The pages inside are made of thick, high-quality rag paper, ivory white and slightly textured under your fingertips, carrying the clean, dry scent of a printing house in Edinburgh. You turn the pages carefully, watching the rows of neat black ink numbers and short, factual sentences slide past. Wind northwest, forced born, fog rolling in from the east, light burning bright. The handwriting of your fellow keepers is beautiful in its simplicity, a testament to the calm dignity of their work. You find the next clean, empty line on the page, waiting patiently for your pen. The vast expanse of white paper rests beneath the lamp, clean, inviting and peaceful, a space where the grand movements of the Atlantic are about to be reduced to quiet, comforting numbers. You sit in the absolute stillness of the lighthouse tower, your focus drifting naturally down to the small essential tools resting on the oak desk before you. Your eyes find the inkwell, a heavy solid cylinder of hand-blown glass that has weathered decades of late-night watches. It is made of a deep, dark forest green glass, so thick almost entirely black, unless the sweeping beam of the main light catches it at a precise angle. When that light passes, for a fleeting fraction of a second, the dark glass glows with a rich, translucent emerald hue, revealing tiny, microscopic air bubbles trapped inside the molten glass. When it was first shaped by a craftsman in an Edinburgh workshop long ago, the surface of the inkwell is cool to the touch, and around its threaded collar, a fine dry crust of midnight blue ink has built up over time, creating a beautiful, rough texture that tells of countless records meticulously kept. Inside the reservoir, the liquid ink is dark, calm, and perfectly still, a miniature, undisturbed pool of deep iron gall ink that reflects a single, tiny point of amber light from the burning lamp above. Beside the heavy glass well rests the traditional dip pen, its holder carved from a single, slender piece of dark walnut wood. The wood has been worn completely smooth by the pressure of many different fingers over the years, absorbing the natural oils of velvet-keepers' hands until it has developed a glossy, velvety patina. It is balanced beautifully light but substantial enough to feel grounding between your fingers. At the tip of the wooden holder is a small curved brass collar that securely grips the writing nib. The nib itself is made of fine, flexible steel with a thin coating of brass, shaped like a delicate, pointed leaf. A microscopic slit runs down the center of the metal, terminating in a tiny circular hole designed to hold a reservoir of ink through capillary action. The metal is slightly tarnished from the acidic nature of the ink, yet the very tip remains brilliantly clean and sharp, catching the warm light of the room like a tiny golden needle. You reach out your hand with a slow, deliberate movement, your fingers wrapping gently around the smooth walnut barrel of the pen. The wood feels instantly familiar and comfortable, an extension of your own hand in this quiet room. You lift the pen from the desk, its weight almost imperceptible, and position it over the open throat of the green glass inkwell. Lowering the pen is an exercise in pure, unhurried mindfulness. You watch the sharp steel tip descend into the dark, reflective pool of ink. An incredibly touches the bottom of sound punctures the silence of the room. You watch a delicate, science of the room, a tiny musical click. It is a soft crystalline tap of metal against thick glass, a sound so minute that in the noise of the outside world, but here in the protected sanctuary of the tower, it echoes with a clear, comforting significance. You hold the pen still for a brief second, allowing the dark liquid to climb steadily up the central slit of the nib, filling the tiny metal reservoir to its precise capacity. The ink clings to the steel, a rich, dark coat that is ready to transfer your thoughts onto the crisp rag paper of the logbook. As you slowly lift the pen back out of the well, you pause just a millimeter above the surface. You watch as a single, heavy droplet of dark ink gathers at the absolute point of the nib. It falls cleanly back into the pool with a microscopic, silent ripple that instantly smoothens out into a perfect mirror. This small, delicate sequence of actions, requiring nothing but your quiet attention, brings a deep wave of stillness to your mind. The entire universe has shrunk down to the point of a pen and a well of dark ink, completely insulated within this warm fortress of stone. The heavy silence of the lantern room is gently broken as the inner door creaks open with a slow, predictable keeper steps back into the warm enclosure. He has returned from the lower deck not to reclaim the watch, but to deliver the official meteorological readings gathered from the external instruments during his earlier inspection. His presence is quiet, almost spectral, perfectly attuned to the deep stillness of the midnight hour. He does not bring any urgency or drama into the room. His movements are completely deliberate and measured, matching the steady rhythm of the rotating lens above. He walks with a slow, heavy tread over to the side of the oak desk, his wool coat casting a long, soft shadow that merges seamlessly vers capite hat yours. When he speaks, his voice is a masterclass in serene monotony that completely lacks any sharp rises, sudden falls, or emotional inflections. It is a voice shaped by decades of isolation and routine, a comforting rhythmic murmur that functions like a mechanical instrument designed solely to convey dry, unvarnished facts to the page. You hold the walnut pen poised just above the ivory rag paper of the logbook, the tip of the steel nib glistening with its fresh, dark coat of iron gall ink. The principal lightkeeper looks down at his small slate pocket board, where he has scratched the raw figures with a piece of white chalk. He begins to read the numbers aloud, his flat voice blending perfectly with the low, wet hiss of the muffled-rised oil lamp and the distant, muffled thud of the Atlantic waves. Each number drifts through the warm air like a heavy, slow-moving pendulum. Barometer, 30.12, falling slowly. The words are spoken vers capite, hast a deliberate drawn-out spacing allowing the dry weight of the meteorological data to settle fully into the room before the next phrase is uttered. There is an extraordinary hypnotic power in the sheer dryness of these scientific measurements. They carry no narrative, no conflict, and no human warmth. They are simply the cold, mathematical properties of the atmosphere, reduced to a series of unchanging syllables. As his flat voice intones the next reading, you bring the steel nib down to touch the surface of the paper. The contrast between his monotone dictation creates a beautifully balanced, dual rhythm that anchors your focus entirely within this tiny circle of light. Wakund, whose temperature, 42 degrees Fahrenheit, steady. You draw the first digit, feeling the subtle, fibrous resistance of the high-quality paper beneath the metal point. The ink flows out smoothly from the tiny reservoir of the nib, filling the grain of the page with a rich, dark line that looks wet and glossy under the amber glow of the reading lamp. You move your wrist with an unhurried, practiced precision, forming the elegant, slanting, cursive numbers that the Northern Lighthouse Board demands of its keepers. The sound of the nib scratching against the paper is incredibly distinct in the quiet room, a soft, dry, rhythmic sibilance that seems to echo the scraping of the sea salt against the outer windows. The principal lightkeeper continues his recitation, his voice remaining completely unchanged, a steady hypnotic hum that shows no awareness of the vast, freezing fog wrapping itself around the cliffs of Eilean Mòr. Wind, north by northwest, force 3, visibility 0. With each phrase he drops into the silence, you execute another series of movements, filling the neat horizontal columns of the logbook with columns horizontals of undeniable order. The sheer boredom of the numbers, the absolute predictability of the vocabulary, and the flat, unvarying tone of his voice begin to act as a profound sedative. Mine, the analytical, worrying parts of your brain are gently, systematically trivial data. There is nothing to interpret, nothing to fear, and nothing to solve. There is only the recording of the pressure, the temperature, the wind and the fog. You watch the wet ink of the latest entry slowly begin to lose its glossy sheen, dry air of the room absorbing the moisture and setting the dark numbers into permanent, historical stillness. You lean slightly closer to the heavy logbook, the warm amber glow of the brass reading lamp catching the exact point where the steel nib meets the ivory-white rag paper. As you begin to form the first digit of the barometric reading, a wonderfully distinct, comforting sound comes alive in the quiet of the room. A soft rhythmic scratching, a dry textured whisper of metal moving over compressed fibres. The paper used by the Northern Lighthouse board is thick and substantial, custom made to survive the damp, salt-laden atmosphere of the ocean. It has a subtle, rough tooth to its surface, a microscopic landscape of hills and valleys that resists the pen just enough to give your hand a deep sense of control. With every slow loop of your wrist, you can feel that resistance through the walnut barrel, a grounding, physical connection to the act of recording history. The air around the desk is rich with the mingling scents of the room, the clean, sharp tang of the fresh ink, the faint, sweet aroma of the old paper itself, smelling faintly of dried wood, linseed oil, and the quiet passage of decades. The scratching sound of the pen becomes the central frequency of your current world. Scratch, scratch. It is a beautifully predictable sound, entirely devoid of urgency, a miniature conversation between the steel and the page. You draw a long slanting stroke to form the number 3, watching the midnight black ink leave the reservoir of the nib and flood into the porous grain of the paper. The ink does not merely sit on top of the page. It sinks deep into the heart of the fibres, bleeding outward by a fraction of a metre to create a soft, velvety edge around the written line. You follow the 3 with a perfectly rounded 0, your hand moving with a slow, mechanical precision that mirrors the turning of the lens far above your head. The repetitive geometry of the numbers, the straight lines, the soft curves, the deliberate pauses to lift the pen, creates a soothing, rhythmic cadence that flows from your fingers straight into your mind. There is a profound meditative peace in reducing the vast, invisible weight of the atmosphere down to these tiny, elegant symbols. The numbers you are writing represent the silent, invisible pressure of the air pressing down upon the lonely rock of Eilean Mòr. 30.12, a high-pressure system, heavy and still, holding the freezing fog low over the dark waters of the North Sea. It is an extraordinary thought, a quiet reminder of how kept beautifully orderly the universe can be, even in the midst of a wilderness. You pause for a brief moment after completing the first set of figures, lifting the steel nib just a millimetre above the page. The principal lightkeeper remains standing beside you, his breathing slow and even, a calm, steady presence that demands nothing but this shared, quiet duty. The room hums with its familiar, domestic acoustics, the soft, wet hiss of the lamp, the steady click of the clockwork mechanism, and the dry, gentle scratch of your own pen whenever you resume. Every sound is a protective layer, a shield of routine that keeps the vast chaotic emptiness of the Atlantic completely at bay. You look down at the freshly written figures, watching the wet ink catch the light like a row of tiny polished black mirrors. Slowly, right before your eyes, the glossy sheen begins to change. The dry, warm air of the lantern room, heated by the great central burner, coaxes the moisture from the page. The bright reflection gradually narrows, shrinking from the edges toward the center of each stroke until the liquid shine disappears entirely. The ink transforms into a beautiful matte charcoal grey, permanently locked into the grain of the ivory paper. This slow, silent transition from wet to dry is a beautiful marker of time passing, a testament to a single peaceful minute spent in perfect safety and isolation. You adjust your grip on the smooth walnut holder, ready for the next set of numbers, fully surrendered to the slow, therapeutic rhythm of the page. Your fingers gently slide the steel nib down to the next column on the ivory page, a narrow section bordered by 2 thin parallel lines of faded red ink. This is the ledger for fuel accountability, a strict requirement of the Northern Lighthouse Board. To track the exact efficiency of the great burner, you lift the walnut pen once more. We're executing the familiar small arc back to the open green glass inkwell. Click. The tiny tap of metal against the glass bottom sounds exactly like the first of a sound, but the steady heartbeat of a sound that has become the steady heartbeat of your writing. As the nib drinks in another measure of the dark iron gall liquid, you look at the printed headings at the top of the column: gallons, pints, fluid ounces. These words are printed in a precise blocky font, completely rigid and formal, to the soft, flowing contrast, to the soft, flowing cursive of your handwritten records. There is a profound, soothing comfort in this absolute structure. Everything has a designated from the place that protects the information from the wild chaos of the dark sea outside. The flat, drone-like voice of the principal lightkeeper moves seamlessly into the next set of data, delivering the consumption metrics with the same unhurried monotone precision. Rapeseed consumption, first watch, 2 gallons, 3 pints, 4 fluid ounces. The words float through the warm, oil-scented air like heavy, slow-moving dust motes, entirely devoid of any dramatic inflection. He reads the numbers not as a story, but as a series of independent facts, each one separated by a long, deliberate pause that allows the quiet hum of the room to fill the spaces between. This mathematical dialogue has a deeply sedative effect on your mind. The numbers are completely dry, empty of emotion, and entirely predictable. They describe the exact rate at which the golden liquid is transformed into pure, saving light, a steady, mathematical single night for decades that has been occurring every conversion. You listen to the numbers and feel your thoughts begin to slow down, matching the flat, unvarying cadence of his speech. You carefully lower the glistening steel nib to the paper, beginning to translate his spoken words into physical reality. You draw the number 2 in the gallons column, the curved top of the digit, looping smoothly before flattening out into a solid anchoring base. The ink flows with a heavy, wet density, filling the porous grain of the paper with absolute precision. Next, you move your hand a fraction of an inch to the right into the column for pints and form the number 3. Your wrist moves with a lazy mechanical rhythm, a sequence of tiny muscles contracting and relaxing in a pattern that requires no conscious effort. The soft, dry scratch of the metal point against the textured paper fills your ears. Scratch, scratch. It is a beautifully isolated sound, a tiny whisper of friction that seems to pull your awareness even deeper into the small, warm circle of light on the desk. By the time you form the digit 4 in the final column, a pleasant, heavy lethargy begins to settle over your senses. The pure, unadulterated boredom of the mathematical figures acts as a gentle rhythmic weight upon your eyelids, coaxing them down. The sheer monotony of tracking these cold, static figures systematically disarms the analytical parts of your brain. In the busy, unpredictable hours of the daytime, your mind must constantly interpret, judge, and react to a chaotic rush of information. But here, in the dead of the winter night on Eilean Mòr, there is absolutely nothing to interpret. The numbers do not change their meaning. They do not threaten, and they do not demand any emotional response. They are simply a peaceful reflection of a world operating in perfect, predictable order. You look at the completed row of figures, a neat horizontal line of wet, glossy black ink that is already beginning to turn a soft, matte charcoal grey as the dry warmth of the room coaxes the moisture from the page. The principal lightkeeper steps back slightly, his shadow shifting lazily across the desk before coming to a complete rest. The task is complete for now. The pen remains resting lightly between your fingers, its wood warm from the heat of your skin. while the great crystal lens above continues its silent, frictionless revolution, throwing its steady beams of light out into the endless silent fog. Setting the walnut pen gently back into its grooved wooden rest, you take a deep, quiet breath and let your shoulders drop completely. The physical work of the logbook is finished for the hour, leaving behind a profound sense of completion and stillness. The principal lightkeeper gives another slow, approving nod before moving quietly over to the small bench by the wall, wrapping himself in his thick wool presentation coat to rest his eyes. So, the room returns to its fundamental state of mechanical solitude. You look down at your hands, noticing the slight imprint of the wooden pen barrel on the skin of your middle finger, a small temporary mark of your quiet labour that slowly fades away as your muscles fully relax. There is no need to rush into the next task. The mechanical world around you is running with a flawless, automated perfection, leaving you with a precious pocket of uninterrupted time to simply exist in the warm, quiet centre of the tower. To reward yourself for a task carefully executed, you turn your attention to the small coal stove, nestled securely into the curve of the granite wall. Sitting on its flat, iron top plate is a heavy cylindrical tea flask made of thick, polished pewter, which has been soaking up the steady warmth of the coals for hours. You stand up slowly from the oak chair, your legs feeling long and slightly heavy, with a comfortable tiredness that tells you the night is deep. As you step toward the stove, the ambient heat grows more intense, a dry, radiating warmth that instantly relaxes the muscles of your neck and back. You reach out and grasp the handle of the pewter flask, using a thick piece of dry sailcloth to protect your fingers from the hot metal. The weight of the flask is compunting, solid, and entirely grounded. You turn the threaded pewter cap slowly, hearing a soft, satisfying hiss of escaping steam as the seal breaks, releasing a rich, fragrant cloud of herbal tea into the warm room. A thin, lazy wisp of white steam rises from the surface of the mug, curling upward into the golden glow of the lamplight. You lift the warm ceramic cup to your lips, letting the rising vapour wash over your face. For a brief moment, the delicate mist catches the ambient light, creating a soft, translucent veil that gently blurs the sharp, metallic edges of the brass barometers and the perfect geometric lines of the crystal lens above. It feels as though the entire world has softened, losing its hard edges and melting into a state of pure, unrestricted comfort. You take a first slow, measured sip. The hot liquid warms your tongue, slips smoothly down your throat, and radiates outward into your chest like a brilliant internal fire. You close your eyes, fully absorbing the profound luxury of this simple warmth, listening to the unchanging, distant murmur of the Atlantic fog, completely safe within your high fortress of stone. Holding the warm ceramic mug securely between your palms, you step away from the small coal stove and drift quietly toward the thick, curved granite wall of the tower. You lean your shoulder against the solid stone surface, feeling its immense, unyielding mass through the thick fabric of your heavy wool shirt. The wall is cool to the touch where it meets the outer air, but here, inside the living heart of the lighthouse, it feels perfectly balanced, a massive shield of raw earth that has been quarried from the Scottish mainland and stacked with absolute precision. This stone barrier is nearly 2 meters thick, a monumental layer of defensive engineers designed by the legendary Stephen the Jagged to anchor this beacon to the wave-beaten cliffs of Eilean Mòr. As you press your ear slightly closer to the rough-hewn surface, you can hear the deep, muffled voice of the Atlantic Ocean, a low, rhythmic thrumming that feels more like a physical vibration in your chest than an actual sound in the ears. The sound of the sea is incredibly distant, completely filtered and softened through the vast thickness of the granite. It does not roar or crash with terrifying violence up here. Instead, the massive walls transform the angry winter storm into a slow, comforting murmur, a rhythmic, deep bass lullaby that rises and falls with a beautiful, predictable cadence. Every few seconds, a massive swell rolls in from the open ocean, slamming into the base of the cliffs 30 meters below. You can feel the microscopic shudder of the tower, a faint, grounding movement that tells you the building is doing exactly what it was designed to do, yielding just enough to absorb the immense energy of the water, remaining completely unbroken. The water recedes with a long, drawn-out sigh, a soft, scraping hiss of millions of gallons of salt water before the next blacks its strength, before the waves gathers its strength. This endless cycle has been repeating for thousands of years, a timeless conversation between the stone and the sea, and tonight you are completely protected within its embrace. You take another slow sip of your warm heather tea, the steam rising up to mingle with the dry oil-scented air of the lantern room. The contrast between the freezing, tumultuous void outside and the absolute security of your high nest is deeply comforting. Out there, in the dark fog, the world is wild, cold, and entirely without form. But here, inside your 2-meter-thick stone cocoon, everything is warm, solid, and meticulously arranged. The brilliant white light from the central burner continues its lazy, silent sweep every 30 seconds, casting long, familiar shadows across the floorboards, while the principal keeper rests peacefully on his bench. You watch a tiny bead of condensation slide down the glass of a barometer, its slow downward journey mirroring the effortless relaxation spreading through your own body. The heavy, dull resonance of the waves functions as a perfect psychological anchor, washing away any remaining fragments of tension, leaving only a state of deep, undisturbed peace. You trace the textured surface of a single granite block with your fingertips, feeling the small flecks of quartz, the dramby, powdery ports, and the dry, powdery mortar that locks the stones. Each block was shaped by hand, hauled up these steep cliffs by ropes and pulleys, and laid in place with the sole purpose of protecting the flame and the men who guard it. Sitting in this high fortress, you realize that there is no safer place on earth tonight. The grand movements of the Atlantic are reduced to a quiet, rhythmic hum, a distant backdrop to the gentle ticking of the clockwork and the soft hiss of the lamp. You allow yourself to fully surrender to the heavy, soothing architecture of the tower, letting your eyes grow heavier with every wave that breaks against the shore, completely insulated within this timeless monument of peace. You carefully place your empty ceramic mug back down onto the flat iron surface of the coal stove, hearing the soft metallic clink as it settles into place. The warmth from the heather tea still radiates through your fingers, but the duties of the late night watch quietly call for your attention once more. You turn away from the thick granite wall and walk slowly toward the inner perimeter of the room, where the low, curved iron guardrail encircles the central weight shaft. This narrow vertical opening drops completely through the hollow heart of the entire lighthouse tower, running parallel to the 160 spiral stone steps all the way down to the dark storage vaults at the base. You lean slightly over the smooth black painted iron rail, looking into the deep echoing void. The shadows down there are dense, cool, and mysterious, standing in stark contrast to the bright golden warmth of the lantern room above. Running precisely through the center of this vertical shaft are the heavy stranded steel cables that hold the life of the light in their tension. You reach out a hand, your fingers hovering just an inch away from the thick wire rope. The cable is composed of hundreds of individual steel strands, twisted together by a manufacturer in Glasgow, to form a rope of immense, unbreakable strength. It is covered in a thick, uniform coating of dark amber-coloured machine grease, which seals the metal from the corrosive salty moisture from the lower levels. Drifting up from the lower levels, you watch the cable as it moves with an almost imperceptible slowness, creeping downward millimetre by millimetre as the clockwork mechanisms consumes its energy every 30 seconds. As the escapement wheel releases a single brass tooth, the steel cable gives a tiny, microscopic shudder, a silent transmission of mechanical power that flows from the depths of the tower right up into the spinning crystal lens. Your eyes travel upward along the dark line of the wire to the point where it passes over the primary pulley block, mounted securely into the heavy iron rafters of the ceiling. The pulley wheel is a massive disc of solid, dull brass, its deep central groove holding the grease-slicked cable in a perfect, frictionless embrace. As you watch, the pulley turns with a slow, majestic dignity, completely silent, save for a rare, incredibly soft metallic hum that vibrates through the iron brackets. This system is a masterclass in elemental simplicity. Hanging far down in the dark shaft below are the governor weights, massive interlocking discs of solid cast iron, each one weighing 50 pounds, stacked together to form a monumental column of pure gravitational force. It is this heavy downward pull of iron toward the earth that drives the entire lighthouse, a beautiful raw calculation of physics that requires no coal, no steam, and no complicated engines to protect the ships at sea. You gently bring your bare index finger down to touch the very edge of the continuous steel wire, feeling the slick, cool texture of the lubricating grease against your skin. Through this thin layer of oil you can feel the immense silent tension locked within the metal, a tightly coiled power that feels completely steady, completely reliable, and entirely at rest. The smell of the heavy oil and old iron rises faintly from the shaft, a clean, comforting scent of industry that blends with the sweet aroma of the rapeseed smoke. There is a profound, comforting peace in knowing that as long as these heavy iron weights continue their slow gravitational descent through the dark centre of the stone tower, the great light will continue to spin with absolute mathematical precision. You stand by the rail for a long, quiet minute, listening to the soft click-clack of the gears echoing from the glass case, entirely surrendered to the slow, heavy mechanics of the winter night. You step around the curved iron guardrail, your boots shifting quietly across the wooden floorboards as you approach the manual winding drum located at the base of the clockwork assembly. This is the moment to restore the mechanical energy of the tower, a task that must be performed every few hours, with absolute care and deliberation. Attached to the side of the massive iron housing is the great winding handle, a long hand-forged iron crank with a thick wooden grip that has been worn completely smooth by the palms of countless lightkeepers over the years. The wood has a rich, darkened colour, seasoned by the natural oils of working hands and the ambient warmth of the room. You reach out and wrap your fingers around the handle, feeling its substantial weight and the cool, solid reality of the iron arm. It requires a firm, steady grip, a grounding connection that connects your own physical strength and motion that keep this lonely beacon alive. Keep this lonely beacon. With a slow, deep breath, you lean your weight into the first turn of the great handle. The resistance is immediate and heavy, a profound physical reminder of the monumental weight hanging in the dark shaft below. As you pull the handle upward in a slow, perfect arc, the silence of the room is broken by a deeply of mechanical sounds. Clink, clink. This is the heavy iron safety pawl sliding effortlessly over the massive teeth of the ratchet wheel. Each distinct clink is a crisp, crystalline note of forged metal meeting forged metal, echoing softly against the curved granite walls of the tower. The sound is slow, unhurried, and perfectly regular, matching the deliberate movement of your shoulder and arm. You do not rush this process. To spin the handle too quickly would place unnecessary strain on the brass gears and the steel cable. Instead, you surrender entirely to a slow therapeutic cadence, turning the iron arm with a steady circular momentum that feels as old as time itself. With every complete revolution of the handle, slowly climb out of the dark shaft, wrapping itself kep ite hat geometric neatness around the grooved iron drum. The thick strands of wire glide into place side by side, forming a gleaming, dark silver cylinder that reflects the amber light of the room. You can smell the subtle warmth generated by the friction of the metal, a rich, clean aroma of heavy machine oil, dry tallow, and the faint scent of old pine from the floorboards below. Through the handle, you can feel the incredible tension of the system, a vibrant, heavy hum that flows up through your wristhets and into your chest. It is a deeply comforting sensation, knowing that your simple, repetitive movements are lifting hundreds of pounds of solid iron high into the air, storing up the silent, kinetic energy that will keep the great crystal lens turning smoothly through the long, freezing hours of the midnight watch. Your muscles work with a calm, rhythmic efficiency, warming slightly under the heavy wool of your shirt. There is no strain, no hurry, only the beautiful, predictable dialogue between the worker and the machine. Clink, clink, clink. The principal keeper continues his peaceful rest on the bench, completely undisturbed by this familiar, domestic music. After several minutes of steady winding, the resistance grows subtly firmer, signalling that the heavy column of vertical shaft. Ironings, you complete the final turn with a slow, deliberate push, ensuring the safety pull into the final groove of the ratchet wheel. With a solid, muffled thud. You slowly release your grip on the wooden handle, watching it remain perfectly motionless, locked in place by the immense gravity below. The task is done. The lighthouse is fully wound, energized to protect the empty sea for hours to come, allowing you to step back into the deep, warm stillness of your high sanctuary. With the great winding handle securely locked and the heavy iron weights safely suspended in the dark shaft, you step softly back toward the center of the lantern room. Your eyes are drawn once more to the narrow circular gap at the base of the massive rotating pedestal, where the extraordinary liquid cushion of the mercury bath resides. You lean in closely, resting one hand on the cool painted iron casing of the outer trough, and look down into the thin silver ring that carries the entire monumental weight of the 2-ton Fresnel lens. The surface of the liquid metal is completely exposed here in a narrow channel, just a few inches wide, appearing as a continuous with unbroken ribbon of liquid silver that wraps around the central column of the thap. It is a mesmerizing sight, a substance that is undeniably liquid, shifting and flowing if disturbed, yet possessed of a heavy, dense stillness makes it look more like solid, highly polished steel. The mirror-like surface of the mercury reflects the warm world of the lantern room with absolute, unblemished clarity. As the giant crystal lens rotates slowly above it, the bright golden rays from the central burner dance across the silver pool, creating tiny, drifting points of light that slide lazily around the ring. You can see the perfect reflection of the brass struts, the ivory pages of the logbook on the distant desk, and the soft, ambient shadow of your own profile, captured in the liquid metal. The mercury does not cling or wet the sides of the iron trough. Instead, due to its immense surface tension, It curves gently downward at the edges, forming a smooth, rounded meniscus that looks incredibly thick and luxurious. It exists in a state of perfect self-contained equilibrium from the frantic rushing world outside. Though completely, there is an extraordinary therapeutic peace in observing this absolute flatness. Outside the lighthouse, the Atlantic Ocean is a chaotic mass of moving water, rising in massive swells and shattering into millions of unpredictable fragments against the rocks. But here, just 30 meters above that untamed wilderness, this tiny ultimate triumph of stillness. It does not ripple. It does not waver. It does not waver. It does not show a single microscopic tremor. Even when the entire stone tower gives its subtle, grounding shudder, as a massive wave hits the cliffs below, the heavy mercury completely absorbs the vibration, remaining perfectly smooth, flat, and undisturbed. It is a powerful shield against friction, a liquid sanctuary that allows a monument of glass to spin in eternal, effortless silence. You breathe in the air near the pedestal, noticing the faint, clean, distinct scent that lingers close to the trough, a subtle metallic coolness that is entirely unique to the heavy elements, standing out sharply against the burning rapeseed oil and the dry heat of the coal stove. You feel a deep sense of calm washing over your own mind as you continue to watch this silver mirror. Your thoughts, which may have been rushing or scattered during the day, begin to mimic the heavy, unruffled density of the mercury. They settle down into a quiet, smooth pool, letting the light of the room pass over them without creating any ripples or disturbance. You stand in the warm, glowing core of the tower, fully surrendered to the beautiful, silent physics of the night, watching the light glide effortlessly over the silver ring as the clockwork ticks steadily in the background. You stand up slowly from your observations of the mercury trough, your joints feeling pleasantly heavy. With the advancing hours of the midnight watch, the time has come for a delicate and ancient maintenance ritual, one that must be performed with the absolute precision of a surgeon whilst the central flame remains pure, white, and perfectly uniform. You step over to the primary burner housing, the radiant heat from the multicapillary argand lamp washing over your face in a steady thick wave of golden warmth. Reaching down to the tool rack beneath the pedestal, your fingers find the specialized wick trimming shears. This instrument is a beautiful piece of maritime cutlery, hand-forged from solid brass, with a unique crescent-shaped box welded onto the top of the flat blades to capture the charred fragments of cotton before they can fall into the clean oil below. The brass is warm from the ambient temperature of the room, and its smooth loops fit perfectly around your thumb and fingers, providing a heavy, balanced controls that grounds your movements. You slowly lift the heavy, cylindrical glass chimney that shields the burnt end of sailcloth to a paddle circles to protect your skin from the intense heat of the glass. As the chimney is raised, the low, wet hiss of the pressurized lamp subtly changes into a soft, open crackle, a raw, natural sound that feels incredibly cozy within this high stone tower. The main burner features 4 concentric rings of thick, woven cotton wicks, all deeply saturated with golden rapeseed oil, feeding a magnificent, steady column of fire. At the very tip of each woven ring, a fine charcoal black crust of carbonized cotton has formed over the hours of continuous burning. This charred edge causes the flame to flutter almost imperceptibly, casting tiny, erratic shadows onto the glass prisms of the lens. Your task is to trim away this spent material, revealing the clean white fibers beneath. You steady your elbow against the solid brass framework of the lamp, lowering the open blades of the shears toward the glowing core, moving with a slow meditative breath. You align the crescent-shaped box with the outermost ring of black cotton. With a gentle, deliberate squeeze of your fingers, the blades together. Snip. The sound is a low, muffled, organic crunch, completely soft yet distinctly satisfying in the quiet room. The blackened tip of the wick is severed cleanly, tumbling into the brass box with a tiny silent movement. Immediately, a rich, nostalgic scent drifts into the warm air, the sharp, earthy smell of toasted cotton thread, and warm, smouldering carbon, a comforting aroma that evokes images of old workshops and quiet hearths. It rises lazily for a moment, blending with the clean perfume of the rapeseed oil, before dissolving completely into the continuous draft of the room. This narrative is deeply inspired by the historical reality of late Victorian maritime life on isolated Eilean Mòr, meticulously reconstructed from the archives of the Northern Lighthouse Board. It reimagines the profound endurance of an anonymous lightkeeper whose grueling devotion directly protected human life against the chaotic Atlantic night, produced by whispers of centuries. Relax and let the next chapters gently carry you away. You repeat the movement for the inner rings, turning your wrist with an unhurried geometric precision. Snip, snip, snip. Each cut requires your full quiet focus, drawing your mind entirely away from the wider world and leaving you centered in this tiny universe of woven fiber and fire. You look closely at the newly exposed edge of the wicks. They are perfectly flat, a beautiful uniform cream-white color, already drinking in the golden oil from below through capillary action. When you slowly lower the hot glass chimney back into place, the flame instantly stabilizes. It rises up as a perfect, unbroken column of pure, dazzling white light, completely silent and perfectly still once more. The tiny erratic shadows vanish, replaced by the smooth, lazy sweep of the giant lens panels. You place the heavy brass shears back onto their rack, feeling a deep wave of relaxation wash over your senses as you return to your seat, fully content with the perfect order you have restored to the heart of the tower. You sink back slowly into the high-backed oak chair, letting your body mold perfectly once more into the smooth, worn contours of the seat. The physical maintenance of the light is complete, and the lantern room has settled into a state of flawless, automated equilibrium. You look around the circular chamber, your eyes tracing the curving granite walls that lock out the frozen wilderness of the North Sea. In this quiet hour, as the midnight deepens, a profound sense of philosophical solitude begins to wash over your mind. You are sitting on a tiny, isolated jagged rock called Eilean Mòr, miles away from the nearest human settlement on the Scottish mainland, entirely cut off from the endless chatter, the demanding schedules, and the rushing pace of modern civilization. Out here, those distant worries do not exist. They have dissolved completely into the thick, freezing fog that presses against the glass. There is an extraordinary, healing beauty in this absolute isolation, a rare privilege to be completely alone with your own breath, guarded by 2 meters of solid stone and a rotating mountain of pure crystal. You rest your hands flat on the smooth surface of the oak desk, feeling the cool, grounding texture of the wood grain beneath your palms. Under the steady amber glow of the small reading lamp, you watch a tiny, lazy plume of smoke rise from the wick of the stove, curling into the warm air before disappearing. In the world below, people are constantly searching for meaning in noise, chasing the fleeting distractions of crowded streets and heavy schedules. But here, in this high sanctuary, you find that meaning is found in the quietest, most unglamorous things. In the steady hiss of the oil lamp, the predictable click-clack of the brass gears, and the heavy, dull resonance of the ocean waves breaking against the cliffs below. Time on this lonely island does not feel like a rushing river threatening to sweep you away. Instead, it feels like a vast, deep, and perfectly still lake. Every second passes with an unhurried dignity, giving you permission to simply be present, to let go of the need to achieve, and to allow your mind to fully rest in the safety of the current moment. As you sit in this peaceful tower, listening to the gentle rhythmic mechanics of the night, you might realize that you can create your very own island of absolute calm right now in your own safe space. Just like this lighthouse, wrapped in its warm cocoon of stone and brass, your bedroom tonight is an impenetrable fortress against the noisy demands of the outside world, the worries of the day that has passed, the tasks waiting for tomorrow, and the endless clutter of the modern world have no authority here. You can let them fade away into the dark mist, just like the cold North Sea water washing over the smooth black rocks far below. Pull that blanket a little tighter, let your muscles soften completely, and allow yourself to sink in the deep restorative solitude of your own quiet sanctuary. You are entirely protected, completely warm, and free to surrender to the slow, heavy rhythm of the darkness. The lantern room continues to hum with its timeless, comforting acoustics. Every 30 seconds, the magnificent white beam of the lens glides over your face, a gentle visual reassurance, keeping watch over the empty sea. The principal lightkeeper rests peacefully on his bench, his slow, rhythmic breathing blending seamlessly with the mechanical heartbeat of the clockwork mechanism. Everything in this room is running exactly as it should, executing its duty with a quiet, unbothered perfection. There is no urgency, no conflict, and no noise, only the beautiful, lazy dance of light and shadow, and the deep, comforting warmth of a world perfectly at peace. You close your eyes, letting the heavy, monotone cadence of the tower wrap around your senses like a soft wool blanket, drifting deeper and deeper into a state of absolute, untroubled tranquility. The midnight hour has officially passed, leaving behind a deep, velvety stillness that wraps around the high stone thap like a heavy winter coat. You look toward the marine chronometer, resting on the corner of the oak desk, its polished silver case catching a stray glint of amber light from the overhead lamp. The delicate, hand-carved black hands have glided silently past the 12, marking the transition into the quietest, most sacred hours of the late-night watch. Time out here, in the isolation of the North Sea, loses its sharp edges after midnight. It stops being a series of stressful deadlines or heavy schedules to be rushed through, and instead becomes a vast, open space of pure, unhurried existence. The entire world below has dissolved, buried beneath the dark waves and the heavy Scottish fog, leaving you as the solitary guardian of this high, warm sanctuary. Looking through the thick plate glass window panes, you notice that the darkness offshore has deepened into an absolute ink-black void. The freezing mist has become so dense that the brilliant beams of the Fresnel lens are swallowed up almost immediately, creating a beautiful, soft halo of white light that hugs the exterior of the lantern room before dissolving into the emptiness. The Atlantic Ocean has completely disappeared from sight, its presence known only by that low, rhythmic thrumming vibrating up through the 2 meters of solid granite beneath your boots. It is a profound, comforting realization that no matter how deep the darkness becomes outside, it cannot touch the warm, bright core of this room. You are sitting inside an impenetrable fortress, a safe capsule of human warmth and mechanical order that's been engineered to withstand the absolute worst that the winter can offer. The cold frost may coat the external iron bolts, but inside the air remains thick, cozy, and perfectly still. The continuous, silent rotation of the giant crystal lens casts a mesmerizing sequence of long, slow-moving shadows across the curved walls of the chamber. These dark shapes glide lazily over the polished floorboards, glide over your resting columns, and pass chords with a predictable hypnotic cadence. Every 30 seconds, the pattern repeats with absolute mathematical precision, creating a gentle visual rhythm that acts as a soothing cradle for your awareness. You watch a tiny flake of dried soot float down through the warm air, illuminated for a fraction of a second by the passing light, before drifting back into the comfortable warmth of the shadows. Every object in the room, the brass barometers, the leather-bound logbook, the pewter tea flask, rests in its designated place, a testament to the beautiful, unhurried discipline that protects this sanctuary from the wild chaos of the sea. You allow your chin to rest gently against your hand, your elbow supported by the smooth, solid wood of the desk. There is absolutely nothing you need to fix, nothing you need to worry about, and nowhere else you need to go. The midnight watch is a time for deep, restful presence, a space where the active, analytical parts of your mind can finally lay down their burdens. The steady click-clack of the clockwork escapement and the low, wet heat hiss of the oil burner create a continuous, comforting barrier of sound that shuts out the worries of the modern world. You are entirely safe, entirely warm, and perfectly insulated within this timeless monument of peace. The giant crystal lens continues its majestic, silent circle on its cushion of liquid mercury, and with every passing moment, the visual landscape of the lantern room shifts in a slow, beautiful dance of illumination and shadow. As the massive bull SI panels sweep past the central flame, the brilliant white light catches the intricate textures of the curved granite walls, revealing the beautiful, rugged details of the masonry. You watch from your quiet seat at the oak desk as the light glides smoothly over the surface of the stone, illuminating the small, glistening flecks of quartz and mica trapped within the grey granite. The light moves like a warm, living brush, painting the cold stone with shades of amber and bright silver before moving onward. Following closely behind the light is a wave of deep, velvet shadow, softening the sharp edges of the room and returning the masonry to a state of quiet, resting darkness. This predictable alternation becomes a visual heartbeat, a steady, unhurried pulse that fills the circular chamber with an atmosphere of absolute safety and peace. The heavy iron frames that hold the thick glass window panes cast long, dramatic shadows that crawl lazily across the tongue and groove floorboards. You track a single shadow as it begins its journey near the small iron stove, its dark form stretching out like a long, protective arm. It slides smoothly over the worn wooden planks, crosses the base of the central pedestal, and climbs up the curved wall of the towers. The shadow's fluid grace. The shadow does not rush. It moves with a deliberate, mechanical slowness that mirrors the heavy clockwork ticking inside its glass case. Watching these dark shapes move around the perimeter of the room creates a powerful sensation of being enclosed within a spinning wheel of pure tranquility. You are at the absolute center of this quiet universe, wrapped in a cocoon of warmth and light, while the wild, unpredictable forces of the North Sea are campete completely outside the glass. There is a profound hypnotic comfort in the sheer repetition of this movement. Exactly every 30 seconds, the light returns, brushing against your skin with a faint, phantom warmth before fading back into the gentle shadow. The regularity of the cycle acts as a powerful sedative for your mind. Each wave of light seems to wash away another tiny layer of modern tension, leaving your thoughts as clean and clear as the polished crystal of the lens. The ambient sounds of the room, the soft, wet hiss of the oil lamp, and the steady click-clack of the escapement blend seamlessly with this visual rhythm, creating a multi-sensory lullaby that gently coaxes your body to relax further into the high-backed chair. Your breathing naturally slows, matching the 30-second rhythm of the turning glass. In, as the room fills with light. Out, as the comforting darkness returns. You close your eyes for a long, peaceful moment, fully surrendered to the slow, heavy mechanics of stone, completely insulated within this high fortress of stone. Sitting back in the steady support of the oak chair, you pull your arms slightly closer to your chest, becoming deeply aware of the tactile reality of the heavy wool sweater wrapping your upper body. This garment is a thick, substantial piece of traditional knitwear, hand-spun from the coarse fleece of Scottish Highland sheep. It feels satisfyingly heavy against your shoulders, a comforting weight that serves a physical reminder of your absolute safety within this high sobby mills. Stone tower. The texture of the yarn is delightfully raw and uneven under your fingertips. If you trace the weave along your forearm, you can feel the individual knots and the dense interlocking stitches. Gripped care by hands-on. Immense care by hands on the mainland. It is not the slick synthetic fabric of modern times, but a living organic shield, a material that carries a faint, comforting scent of natural lanolin oil, clean wood smoke, and the distant meadows of the outer islands. The thick wool functions as a beautiful personal sanctuary, trapping the dry, radiating heat of the coals your skin, while completely sealing out the damp, biting chill of the North Sea fog. As you adjust your position, the fabric makes a soft, muted rustling sound, a quiet, reassuring whisper of dry fibres shifting against one another that is immediately absorbed by the warm air of the room. You run your hand over the cuff of your sleeve, feeling the rough, fibrous surface that is incredibly durable, yet wonderfully soft in its protection. There is an extraordinary sense of timeless comfort in being clothed in etugé elemental materials. This sweater was made to endure the fiercest winter gales, to keep a lightkeeper dry and warm during the longest, most monotonous midnight watches. Wrapped within its dense weave, your body registers a deep instinctual sense of security. You feel completely cradled, completely a wilderness from the vast freezing wilderness that presses against the thick glass panes of the lantern room. You let your eyes drift down to the intricate pattern of the knit, watching the way the warm amber light of the reading lamp catches the raised ridges of the wool, creating a miniature landscape of soft gold highlights and deep velvety shadows on your sleeve. The repetition of the knitted pattern, row after row of perfect interlocking loops, mirrors the beautiful unhurried order of the lighthouse itself. Everything in your world right now is designed for protection, for stability, and for peace. The thick granite walls protect the tower, the heavy glass protects the flame, and this coarse wool protects you. You take a deep, slow breath, feeling the gentle rise and fall of your chest against the comforting resistance of the heavy fabric. The absolute predictability of your physical comfort allows your mind to let go of its last remaining defenses. There are no cold drafts here, no unexpected disruptions, and no discomfort. There is only the thick warmth of the wool, the steady click-clack of the clockwork, and the lazy, beautiful turning of the magnificent silent sea, keeping watch over the steady, rhythmic ticking of the marine chronometer guides your focus. Back to the polished surface of the oak desk, where the elegant black hands of the silver timekeeper slowly align to mark the hour of 2:00 in the morning. The deep midnight has transitioned into the colds of the early morning watch, a period where the isolation of Eilean Mòr feels absolute and beautifully complete. You reach out your hand, sliding the heavy leather-bound logbook a few inches closer into the golden circle of light cast by the reading lamp. The paper rests open, its pristine ivory surface waiting patiently for the next recorded fragment of the night's history. You lift your gaze for a moment, looking past the warm brass instruments toward the massive glass window panes, preparing to observe and evaluate the changing state of the atmosphere outside your stone sanctuary. The freezing fog from the North Sea has grown even denser over the past 2 hours, transforming into a heavy undulating blanket of thick white vapour that presses hard against the glass. Every 30 seconds, as the brilliant beam of the Fresnel lens sweeps through the night, it illuminates the intricate structure of the fog clouds, revealing a slow, hypnotic churning of microscopic water droplets. The mist looks almost solid under the intense light, like vast silent snowdrifts suspended in mid-air, rolling and tumbling in slow motion around the perimeter of the tower. You lean forward slightly, observing how blowing steadily from the north-northwest shapes the fog, tearing its edges into long, not wat and fong, lazy tendrils that slide across the salty glass before dissolving back into the velvet darkness. There is a profound, comforting stillness in watching this quiet turbulence from inside your warm, impenetrable cocoon. The external world is completely lost in a sea of grey frost, yet here, your focus remains sharp, steady, and entirely at peace. You pick up the slender walnut pen once more, its wood instantly absorbing the familiar warmth of your fingers. With a slow, deliberate movement, you lower the steel nib into the dark green glass inkwell, hearing that tiny crystalline tap echo softly in the quiet room. Click, you lift the pen, allowing the rich iron gall ink to fill the metallic reservoir before bringing the point down to meet the textured surface of the rag paper. Because you begin to write, the soft, dry scratch of the nib cutting through the rhythmic hiss of the main burner. Scratch, scratch. You carefully write the time, Heiser Comfort AM, your hand moving with an unhurried, mechanical precision that matches the turning of the lens far above. On the horizontal line, you record the wind direction and the density of the air, translating the vast movements into neat, disciplined script. Hit wind north-norths, wind north-northwest, force 3, fog exceptionally dense, wrapping the tower entirely. Visibility 0. As you complete the final letter, you lift the pen and watch the fresh ink glisten like wet tar under the amber lamplight. Slowly, the dry, warm air of the lantern room begins to coax the moisture from the page, and you watch the glossy reflection narrow and fade, leaving behind a beautiful, matte charcoal line permanently embedded in the paper. This simple act of measurement and recording done in the deep stillness of 2 in the morning, grounds are completely bond 2 in the morning. There is nothing else to interpret, no hidden dangers to fear, and no unexpected changes to navigate. The numbers and words are simple, static, and safe. You rest your forearms on the cool oak wood, fully content with the perfect mechanical order of your world, listening to the unchanging, distant murmur of the Atlantic waves breaking against the cliffs below. You gently slide the high-backed oak chair backward, its heavy wooden legs making a faint the tongue and groove floorboards as you stand up to stretch your limbs. The deep stillness of 2 o'clock in the morning has settled completely into your bones, bringing with it a profound, comfortable heaviness that makes every movement feel slow and deliberate. You step across the warm perimeter of the lantern room, your eyes naturally drawn to the massive vertical glass and brass cabinet that houses the master clockwork mechanism. This is the absolute brain of the Lighthouse Tower, an intricate masterpiece of Victorian engineering designed by the finest horologists in Edinburgh to operate without a single moment of human hesitation. The entire mechanism is enclosed within a pristine housing of thick, beveled plate glass panes held together by a sturdy, polished gunmetal framework. This protective shield ensures that not a single speck of dust, soot, or salt-laden moisture from the North Sea can penetrate the delicate moving parts within, preserving the absolute purity of the machine. Shook. As you stand before the cabinet, the steady amber light from the overhead lamp reflects off the glass facets, casting a warm, shimmering grid of light and shade across the smooth timber floorboards. Inside the case, the great brass gear wheels turn with a majestic, unimaginable slowness that instantly commands your quiet attention. Each wheel is cast from solid, heavy brass, its perimeter precision cut with hundreds of identical, triangular teeth that mesh together with absolute, frictionless perfection. You isolate a single, massive driving gear with your eyes. It is nearly 2 feet in diameter, its face polished to a velvety mirror-like finish that catches the golden glow of Velvetble's burner. It turns so slowly that its motion is almost imperceptible to the naked eye, a silent, relentless translation of gravitational power from the heavy iron weights hanging far down in the vertical shaft below. Meshed into this giant wheel are a series of progressively smaller pinions and secondary gears, each one turning slightly faster, stepping up the raw power of the weights into the exact rotational speed required to spin the 2-ton crystal lens above. The deep internal architecture of the machine reveals a world of absolute order and predictability, standing as a stark, beautiful contrast to the chaotic, shapeless fog rolling across the dark ocean outside the glass panes. At the very top of the gear train sits the escapement mechanism, the absolute regulator of time and light in the high tower. Thus, you watch the anchor-shaped pallets swing back and forth with a slow, mesmerizing rock, executing a timeless dance of balance and restraint. Click, click, clack, the hardened steel tips of the anchor catch and release the teeth of the escape wheel, with mathematical precision creating the steady, acoustic heartbeat that defines the solitary life of the lightkeeper. This sound is not sharp or disruptive. It has been softened by the thick glass casing, the heavy brass frames, and the dense timber of the floorboards into a low, resonant thrum that fills the room like a comforting mechanical pulse. Each click represents a fraction of a second perfectly measured, a tiny fragment of the wild winter tamed, brought into alignment and logged into human history, You find yourself leaning your forehead gently against the cool, smooth surface of the outer glass case, feeling the rhythmic, microscopic vibration of the turning gears transferring directly into your skin. Above the escapement, the rotating governor fly spins in absolute velvety silence. This vital component consists of 2 identical brass vanes mounted on a slender vertical spindle, spinning rapidly to use air resistance as a natural brake, ensuring the entire mechanism turns at a perfectly uniform velocity without any sudden surges or drops. The spinning vanes create a tiny localized vortex of movement inside the glass case, a beautiful, silent blur of motion, and never varies by a single millimeter never varies. You watch the golden reflections melt into a smooth, continuous circle of light around the steel spindle, a perfect visual representation of pure, uninterrupted tranquility. Your breathing naturally synchronizes with the slow, rhythmic swinging of the escapement pallets, slowing down to match the ancient pulse of the machinery. The heavy industrial monotony of the mechanism functions as a perfect psychological anchor, stripping away the last remaining fragments of daily worry, leaving your awareness entirely centered within this warm, protected fortress of glass, brass, and stone. You slowly pull your forehead away from the cool glass of the clockwork cabinet, your eyes tracking the vertical path of the rotational power. As it exits the top of the gunmetal housing, rising directly from the heart of the gear train is the main drive shaft, a solid column of tempered steel 2 inches thick and polished to a flawless, dark sheen. This shaft extends vertically from the cabinet, straight up to the heavy iron rafters of the ceiling, rotating with an absolute majestic slowness that instantly captures your resting gaze. It requires several minutes for the steel column to complete a single full revolution, making its movement appear almost specific grain static unless you fix your focus on a specific grain in the metal. The surface of the steel is coated in a micro-thin layer of specialized lubrication oil, which catches the warm, amber light of the lantern room, creating a long, vertical ribbon of liquid gold that seems to slide endlessly around the circumference of the shaft as it turns. There is an extraordinary, soothing quality to this vertical motion, a single unhurried line of light, turning in a world of absolute, unbroken rhythm. At the point where the steel shaft meets the upper ceiling rafters, it integrates with a pair of massive, heavy bevel gears designed to redirect the horizontal rotation into the vertical plane of the lens pedestal. These gears are beautifully sculpted from solid, marine-grade phosphor bronze, their heavy conical faces cut with mathematical certainty that mesh together with mathematical certainty. To prevent any metallic friction or ringing tones from disturbing the quiet sanctuary of the tower, the teeth are packed with a thick compound of amber grease and fine graphite flakes as the teeth slide into one another, they produce no sharp clicks or grinding vibrations. Instead, they create a deep, incredibly soft hydraulic murmur, a low, organic purr that is so deeply resonant it feels more like a gentle pressure within the room than an audible sound. This mechanical whisper speaks of immense power operating under perfect restraint, a monumental weight being guided through space with the effortless grace of a sleeping giant. Suspended just beside the interlocking teeth of the bronze gears is a small, elegant maintenance instrument. A needle valve drop lubricator made of clear, heavy gauge glass and polished brass bracket hat. A highly refined, transparent mineral oil that glows like liquid honey. Liquid honey under the ambient light of the room. You watch with a slow, meditative interest as the laws of capillary action and gravity work together inside the tube. At the base of the glass cylinder, a microscopic grass needle allows the oil to gather drop by drop at a perfectly metered interval, releasing exactly 1 drop of golden oil every 45 seconds in a slow, continuous accumulation of light, followed by a clean, silent release. You witness a single heavy droplet form at the tip of the needle, and it grows slowly, a perfect shimmering sphere of gold that catches the reflection of the central burner, holding all the warmth of the room within its tiny boundaries. It hangs there for several long, unhurried seconds, stretching downward as its weight increases, before finally detaching and falling silently into the waiting teeth of the gear below. The clean, slightly warm aroma of this refined mineral oil blends seamlessly with the rich peat smoke from the stove, creating a unique olfactory background that signals safety and continuous maintenance. The absolute predictability of this dropping oil functions as a profound sedative for your awareness. Your mind does not need to anticipate what will happen next. There are no surprises, no sudden accelerations, and no mechanical failures in this perfectly maintained universe. The drop falls, the gears turn, the light glides across the steel shaft, and the great lens far above continues its silent sweep through the freezing mist of Eilean Mòr. You let your chin sink a little lower against your chest, the heavy wool of your Highland sweater rising and with the unhurried mechanics of the tower, with the comfortable, the vast chaotic emptiness of the Atlantic Ocean, with all its cold winds and blinding fog, is completely powerless against the absolute, disciplined order of this warm room. You stand entirely insulated, your thoughts dissolving into the low hypnotic purr of the bronze gears, sliding deeper into a state of heavy, undisturbed tranquility. Leaving the gentle graphite-scented purr of the bronze bevel gears behind, your gaze drifts downward along the central pedestal to trace the network of secondary fuel lines that supply the great argand burner. Running parallel to the iron structural columns are a series of slender copper delivery tubes, no thicker than a willow branch, which loop gracefully around the base of the lamp assembly like a system of warm metal veins. These tubes are crafted from the highest grade of soft British copper, hand-drawn and meticulously bent by shipyard blacksmiths to ensure there are no sharp angles or rough seams to disrupt the continuous hydrostatic pressure of the oil. Over the decades, the constant, diligent polishing by the keepers has given the metal a deep, lustrous rose gold sheen that seems to absorb the brilliant white radiance of the flame above, converting it into a soft, localized warmth that radiates outward for a few inches. You reach out and let the tips of your fingers glide along the smooth, curved surface of the primary supply pipe, feeling the steady, vibrating warmth of the rapeseed oil flowing silently within its walls on its journey to the burning wicks. Every few feet along the copper lines, a miniature brass control valve is integrated into the system, acting as a precise regulator for the gravity-fed fuel. You focus your attention on the primary bypass valve, a beautiful, delicate piece of mechanical plumbing equipped with a small, knurled thumb wheel that has been worn completely smooth around its perimeter by the touch of countless working hands. The brass has developed a rich, darkened patina, seasoned by years of exposure to the dry heat of the lantern room and the faint, invisible mist of atomized oil, moving with an unhurried, meditative slowness. You place your thumb and forefinger against the knurled edge of the wheel, experiencing the firm, solid resistance of the tightly packed tallow gland that seals the internal threads. You give the wheel a microscopic turn, adjusting the flow by a mere fraction of a millimeter to ensure the oil pressure remains perfectly balanced against the capillary draw of the cotton wicks. Through the metal, you can feel the tiny internal shift of the brass needle sliding deeper into its seat, followed by an incredibly faint, liquid gurgle as the heavy oil adjusts itself to the new boundary. The oil does not rush through these copper conduits. It moves with a lazy, viscous dignity that perfectly matches the slow tempo of the early morning watch. It is driven purely by the natural laws of gravity, flowing down from a pair of heavy, cylindricals of the Seans, mounted high on the upper iron rafters of the ceiling, where it is kept at a constant, uniform temperature by the rising warmth of the central burner. This arrangement ensures that the fluid never thickens or becomes sluggish, even when the external iron dome of the lighthouse is coated in a thick shell of freezing North Sea ice. You watch a tiny reflection of the central flame slide along the polished curve of a copper elbow joint, its bright dot of light moving in perfect synchronization with the lazy rotation of the giant lens panels above. There is a profound, hypnotic satisfaction in witnessing a system so completely self-contained and bifunctional, a world where human ingenuity has tamed the basic elements of fire, oil, and metal to create an unbreakable circle of safety in the midst of a vast wilderness. This absolute mechanical certainty creates an impenetrable barrier against the chaotic reality of the Atlantic night, allowing your remaining thoughts to fully unwind and dissolve into the quiet rhythm of the room. You look back toward the oak desk where the logbook rests, its matte charcoal lines of text permanently of the watch, while the principal keeper continues his deep, undisturbed slumber on the wooden bench by the wall. The soft, wet hiss of the lamp and the steady, distant thrumming of the ocean waves breaking against the cliffs below function as a continuous acoustic blanket, wrapping around your senses and pulling you deeper into a state of heavy, comfortable lethargy. Wrapped securely within the thick, coarse wool of your Highland sweater, you feel completely insulated from the freezing fog and the empty darkness outside the glass panes. Every valve is set, every gear is turned, and every drop of oil is moving exactly where it belongs, leaving you to the slow therapeutic cadence to do, but yield to the slow therapeutic cadence of the tower, letting your eyelids grow heavier with every silent sweep of the light. Turning away from the intricate copper fuel lines, your heavy footsteps carry you slowly across the dark timber floorboards toward a small, beautifully carved mahogany instrument board mounted securely against the coldest section of granite wall. This, the scientific anchor of the lantern room. This, special station holding the delicate instruments that allow the lightkeepers to read the invisible shifts in the Atlantic atmosphere. Ver kepite, ha absolute clarity, under the soft golden glow of a dedicated brass gimbal's lamp. The glass faces of the gauges glimmer like frozen pools of water, each one reflecting a tiny, distorted version of the central burner flame. You stop before the display, resting one hand on the smooth, polished edge of the mahogany frame, feeling the deep chill of the outer air radiating faintly through the stone masonry just behind it. The contrast between this localized coolness and the thick enveloping warmth of the room creates a pleasant tingling sensation against your skin, drawing you deeper into a state of quiet, focused observation. In the center of the wooden board rests the primary aneroid barometer, a massive instrument housed in a heavy, cylindrical casing of solid, dark lacquered brass. Behind its thick, beveled glass cover sits an ivory dial plate inscribed with elegant copperplate calligraphy that details the spectrum of maritime weather from stormy geats to fair clear skies. You lean in close, your eyes tracing the path of the primary indicator needle, which is hand-cut from a single piece of blued steel, as thin and delicate as a human hair. The needle points steadily toward the lower edge of the fair weather zone, its position remaining completely motionless, showing that the immense atmospheric pressure of the midnight fog has flattened out into a state of perfect, unyielding equilibrium. Just beside the main pointer rests the small brass set needle adjusted by the evening watchman hours ago. The two metal lines overlap perfectly, a visual proof that the night is locked in a frozen, unchanging pattern of absolute stillness. Suspended just below the barometer is a specialized sympiezometer, a rare and highly sensitive instrument utilized by the Northern Lighthouse Service to detect the earliest signs of approaching storms. This device consists of a long, narrow glass tube filled with a deeply colored ruby red herbal oil, which rises and falls against a highly detailed scale of silvered brass. You watch the brilliant red liquid inside the column, its surface forming a perfectly rounded, pristine meniscus that appears completely static in the quiet light. The oil does not fluctuate or ripple. It rests in its narrow channel that mirrors the absolute stability of the murky bath beneath the giant lens. The deep crimson colour of the fluid provides a beautiful, striking point of contrast within the amber and grey world of the tower, a small, vibrant jewel of science operating silently in the heart of the winter night. To the right of the oil column hangs a heavy marine thermometer, its bulb protected by a decorative, slotted brass cage to prevent accidental damage during a storm. The thick column of mercury inside the glass tube is remarkably wide, its silver line resting precisely at 42 degrees Fahrenheit, a testament to the steady efficiency of the small coal stove that keeps the internal air of the tower perfectly comfortable are wrapped in freezing frost, while the external cliffs, you trace the silver path of the metal with your eyes, letting the heavy, unhurried precision of the measurements wash over your mind. There is a profound therapeutic comfort in knowing that the entire chaotic system of the North Sea winter can be broken down into these quiet, orderly numbers, neatly arranged on a piece of polished wood. Your thoughts begin to mimic the static perfection of the instruments, settling into a deep, unruffled calm as you step back into the warm centre of the room, fully content to let the night pass in absolute, measured peace. Stepping away from the mahogany instrument board, your gaze shifts toward wooden shelves, a series of shallow wooden shelves, built directly into the curve of the granite wall, just beneath the lower iron ring of the lantern room framework. This storage alcove houses the specialized maintenance cloth and polishing agents required to keep the vast expanses of brass and glass in a state of flawless optical perfection. Hung neatly from a row of hand-carved pine pegs are several large pieces of genuine chamois leather, their pale cream-coloured surfaces completely clean and dry. You reach out a hand, your fingers burying into the velvety texture of the primary polishing cloth, feeling its incredible cloud-like softness against your skin. This leather is remarkably thick and pliable, having been oil-tanned by traditional artisans in the Scottish lowlands to ensure it remains entirely free of lint or abrasive grit. As you gently compress the fabric between your palms, it releases a faint, deeply comforting aroma of natural cod oil and clean wool, an earthy, domestic scent that instantly softens the sharp, metallic air of the machinery and reminds you of quiet workshops tucked away from the winter wind. Directly beside the hanging leathers sits a row of small, heavy stoneware jars, each one sealed with a thick, round cork stopper and labelled in neat, fading ink. These jars contain the traditional polishing powders, utilised by the Northern Lighthouse service, including fine English whiting and deep crimson jewellous rouge. You slide your fingers over the smooth, salt-glazed surface of the nearest clay jar, feeling the cool, solid weight of the earthenware beneath your touch. Moving with a deliberate, slow-motion grace, you wrap your hand around the cork stopper and twist it gently, hearing a soft, satisfying squeak as the tight seal releases. A tiny, almost invisible puff of dry mineral powder escapes into the warm air, bringing with it a subtle, clean scent of crushed earth and refined stone. This ultra-fine powder is the secret behind the brilliant mirror-like surfaces of the tower, a substance designed to smooth away the microscopic imperfections caused by the salty sea air, leaving nothing but pure, unblemished reflection. You take a small, clean corner of the chamois leather and touch it lightly to the decorative brass guardrail of the central pedestal, embarking on a slow, entirely voluntary ritual of maintenance to occupy the quietest moments of the early morning. There is no urgent tarnish to remove, no stain to scrub away. This act is purely meditative, a rhythmic grounding exercise of care and presence. You guide the soft leather across the curved metal surface in long, slow circular loops, your shoulder and arm moving in a predictable, hypnotic cadence that perfectly matches the rotating heartbeat of the great lens above. Shh! The sound of the dry leather sliding over the polished brass is incredibly soft and hushed, a gentle, lazily into the warm air before blending into the continuous wet hiss of the main burner. With every slow pass of your hand, the brass catches the amber glow of the reading lamp with greater intensity, creating a deep, liquid gold reflection that seems to slide smoothly along the metal rail, following the path of your fingers. This simple, repetitive motion acts as a profound sedative for your awareness, drawing your focus away from the vast, freezing void of the Atlantic night and anchoring it entirely within the small space of your hand and the metal. The sheer predictability of the work strips away any remaining layers of daily thought, leaving your mind as clean and unruffled as the polished brass beneath the cloth. You finish the small section, step back, and admire the flawless golden surface that looks warm enough to touch. You carefully fold the chamois leather back over its wooden peg and replace the cork stopper in the stoneware jar with a quiet order you have maintained. Fully content with the quiet order you have maintained, the principal keeper remains deep in his peaceful rest, completely undisturbed by your silent movements, while the clockwork continues its steady mathematical ticking in the background. Wrapped securely in your heavy wool sweater, you feel a deep wave of relaxation wash over your body as you prepare to return to the high-backed oak chair, completely insulated within this high fortress of stone and light. You slowly return to the center of the lantern room, your boots moving with a heavy, relaxed cadence across the smooth timber floorboards until you reach the high-backed oak chair. As you lower yourself back into the seat, the solid wood frames accommodate your weight with a familiar, comforting rigidity, and you let your shoulders drop completely, releasing the last remnants of physical tension into the steady support of the backrest. You lean back, resting your hands flat on the wide armrests, feeling the cool, polished grain of the oak beneath your palms. From this vantage point, the entire circular sanctuary feels beautifully small, secure, and complete. The world outside the thick plate glass window panes remains a vast frozen void, darkness, and swirling Scottish fog. But inside this stone fortress, the air is thick, dry, and perfectly warm, held in a state of absolute equilibrium by the gentle radiance of the coal stove and the great central burner. Your eyes drift to the far corner of the wide oak desk, where the heavy pewter tea flask rests under the soft amber glow of the reading lamp. The flask is a beautiful piece of maritime utility, its cylindrical body wrapped in a thick layer of dark, hand-stitched sailcloth to preserve the temperature of the liquid within during the long, freezing hours of the winter watch. You reach out a hand curling around the rough fabric jacket and slide the heavy container closer across the smooth wood surface. The metal base makes a low hollow scrape against the oak before coming to a stop within the warm circle of light. Moving with an unhurried, deliberate slowness, you unscrew the wide pewter cap, hearing the soft, rhythmic squeak of the metallic threads as they turn under your thumb. The moment the seal breaks, a thick, twisting plume of pure white steam rises lazily into the air with a rich, deeply nostalgic aroma of wild heather, sweet clover honey, and dried mountain herbs. You carefully lift the heavy flask and tip it over your empty ceramic mug, watching the dark, amber-coloured heather tea pour out in a smooth, continuous stream. The liquid splashes softly against the bottom of the mug, creating a low, musical gurgle that is incredibly soothing in the quiet room. Before rising to fill the vessel with a rich, steaming warmth, you replace the pewter cap with a gentle twist, set the flask aside, and wrap both of your hands entirely around the curved sides of the ceramic mug. The intense heat transfers immediately into your skin, sending a deep, penetrating wave of comfort through your fingers and into your arms, melting away the subtle chill of the midnight air. You lift the mug toward your face, letting the warm, aromatic steam bathe your skin and eyes, carrying with it the fragrant memories of the sun-drenched hillsides of the mainland, a beautiful contrast to the desolate, wave-swept rocks of Eilean Mòr. You take a tiny, slow sip of the hot tea, letting the complex flavours of honey and earth linger on your tongue before swallowing, feeling the liquid warmth travel down your chest like a comforting fire. There is an extraordinary therapeutic peace in this simple act of nourishment, performed in the absolute stillness of the early morning watch. You look across the desk toward the leather-bound logbook, its open pages resting quietly under the lamp, recording a night where everything is running in perfect mathematical order. The principal keeper continues his deep, rhythmic breathing on the wooden bench, completely synchronized with the steady, distant click-clack of the clockwork mechanism. You lean your head back against the top of the oak chair, your eyes tracking the long, lazy shadows of the lens panels as they slide across the curved granite walls with hypnotic precision. Yet, wrapped securely in the heavy wool of your sweater, with the warm mug cradled in your hands, you allow your awareness to float effortlessly on the slow, unhurried current of the night, the collie sinking deeper into a state of absolute, untroubled tranquility. You gently set the ceramic mug back down onto the oak desk, the base of the cup meeting the wood with a soft, hollow click that sounds incredibly crisp in the quiet sanctuary of the lantern room. The deep, restorative warmth of the heather tea continues to radiate outward from your core, softening your muscles and casting a pleasant, dreamy languor over your entire awareness, and your gaze wanders upward from the desk, drawn naturally toward the massive expanse of the outer glass windows that wrap around the upper perimeter of the stone tower. This great glass dome is an architectural marvel of the Northern Lighthouse service, constructed from dozens of oversized, triangular panes of heavy English plate glass, each one over an inch thick and engineered to withstand the monumental impact of hurricane-force Atlantic gales. From your secure seat in the center of the room, these windows represent the thin, crystalline boundary between two entirely different universes, the wild, freezing chaos of the Scottish night outside and the warm, golden, mathematically ordered world within. As you look closely at the glass, you notice the intricate network of heavy structural frames that hold the massive panes in place. These frames are cast from solid, marine-grade structural iron, hand-riveted into a series of elegant, internatural geometry of a crystal that mimic the natural geometry of a crystal. The iron has been coated in multiple layers of thick, glossy black protective enamel, which catches the sweeping white beams of the Fresnel lens, creating a brief rhythmic sequence of dark, velvet reflections that slide lazily across the framework. Every 30 seconds, you watch the way the light catches the rounded contours of the iron rivets, each one a solid, reassuring anchor that has held the tower winter storms. Through decades of relentless winter storms, there is an extraordinary sense of psychological safety in observing this structural strength, a deep instinctual knowledge that the architecture surrounding you is completely indestructible, completely unyielding against the invisible pressures of the vast wilderness. Outside, the extreme contrast between the freezing external air and the dry, radiant heat of the natural cold phenomenon across the surface of the glass panes. Seined, a thin, delicate film of microscopic condensation has begun to form along the outer clear glass into a soft frosted mirror that glows with a faint, not laser, with a spoten, pearlescent amber hue under the light of the central burner. You watch with a slow, meditative fascination as the tiny water droplets slowly coalesce, gathering weight and mass until they form a single perfect bead of clear water. This droplet begins a slow, lazy descent down the vertical plane of the glass, carving a pristine, crystal-clear path through the frosted condensation before sliding into the small, polished brass drainage channel running along the base of the window frame. The movement is entirely silent and unhurried, a gentle, gravity-driven journey that happens thousands of times across the perimeter of the room, creating a slow, visual tapestry of moving water that is deeply mesmerizing to follow with your eyes. The brass drainage channels, or condensation gutters, are beautifully integrated into the lower iron ring of the framework, polished to a bright, reflective finish that gleams like a ribbon of gold under the reading lamp. You lean your head back against the high oak chair, listening intently to the microscopic acoustic landscape of the room, beneath the steady, wet hiss of the pressurized oil lamp and the rhythmic click-clack of the clockwork mechanism. You can just barely detect the soft, incredibly faint whisper of the condensation water trickling through the hidden lead drain pipes that lead safely down into the stone walls. This sound is so gentle, so completely organic, that it functions as a perfect lullaby, a soft mechanical purr that systematically disarms the final analytical defenses of your mind. You are completely insulated, completely protected, wrapped within a heavy wool fortress, where even the moisture of the air is absolute silence collected and guided away in absolute silence, leaving you free to surrender entirely to the heavy, comforting embrace of the approaching morning. Your gaze slowly drifts away from the glistening brass condensation gutters at the base of the windows, drawn by a shifting wave of deep, radiant warmth toward the small cast-iron stove nestled securely against the interior masonry curve of the tower. This sturdy little heater is the true emotional heart of the lantern room during these long winter watches, a solid monument of blackened iron that has stood in the same spot since the day the lighthouse was first lit. It is cast from thick, heavy Scottish iron, its circular body adorned with elegant, low relief, scrollwork, and geometric patterns that have grown smooth and softly rounded under generations of meticulous graphite polishing. The stove sits upon a massive slab of dressed grey flagstone, which serves as a protective thermal energy, and radiating it back out into the room like a gentle becomb-to-wind subterranean sun. As you look toward it, the air directly above the iron dome shimmers and blurs with intense heat, creating a beautiful, fluid distortion that makes the distant brass frames of the clockwork look as though they are floating underwater. Moving with a slow, relaxed grace, you lean slightly forward in your oak chair, resting your elbows on your knees to watch the small mica window panes set into the heavy stove door. These miniature sheets of natural translucent mineral are patterned with fine smoky lines, fracturing the firelight within into a beautiful fractured tapestry of deep crimson, burnt amber, and brilliant gold. Inside the belly of the stove there is no roaring, turbulent flame to disrupt the quiet sanctuary of the watch. Instead, the fire has settled into a magnificent, deeply mature bed of glowing anthracite coal and rich, dense mountain peat. The embers pulse with a slow, rhythmic luminosity, breathing with a faint internal cadence that seems to mimic the steady rotation of the great crystal lens above. Every few minutes, a tiny subterranean shift occurs within the fuel bed as a piece of spent peat crumbles silently into the white ash below, releasing a soft, brief cascade of brilliant orange sparks that dance behind the mica window before fading back into the velvet shadows. The scent that rises from the small stove is incredibly rich, clean, and deeply grounded, a nostalgic perfume of ancient earth, dried heather roots, and slow-burning carbon that completely neutralizes the cold, metallic sharpness of the machinery. This warm aroma wraps around your senses like a thick, protective blanket, instantly evokes feelings of ancient hearths, safe kitchens, and deep, untroubled domestic security. You stretch your legs out toward the stone hearth, feeling the intense, dry heat penetrate through the handy fabric of your socks and the thick hand-knitted wool of your Highland socks. The warmth slides up your shins and thighs, relaxing the deep muscles of your legs and sending a profound wave of physical relief directly into your lower back. It is a sensation of pure, unadulterated comfort, an absolute luxury of warmth in the face of the freezing wilderness that continues to beat fruitlessly against the exterior granite walls of Eilean Mòr. Beneath the steady, wet hiss of the oil lamp and the rhythmic click-clack of the clockwork, the stove contributes its own quiet, acoustic signature to the late-night lullaby of the tower. You listen intently to the faint microscopic metallic clicks as the heavy cast-iron plates expand, a comforting domestic sound that speaks of stability, a comforting vigil that speaks of stability, endurance, and perfect thermal order. There is absolutely nothing you need to adjust, no fuel to add, and no fire to tend. The stove is perfectly regulated, carrying enough dense energy to maintain this warm, cozy capsule until the first grey light of dawn begins to fracture the eastern horizon. Your mind fully surrenders to this heavy, radiant environment, your thoughts slowing down to match the slow amber pulse of the glowing embers. You sink all the way back into the deep cushions of the high-backed chair, letting your eyelids grow heavier and heavier, fully insulated within this high fortress of stone, light, and fire. The glowing amber heart of the small cast-iron stove continues to radiate its deep, soothing warmth, wrapping around your resting form like an invisible, weightless velvet blanket. The time has now glided seamlessly past 3:00 in the morning, entering that most sacred, profoundly quiet window of the watch, where the line between the physical world and the world of dreams begins to soften and blur. Your body has become incredibly heavy, sinking so deeply into the smooth, familiar contours of the high-backed oak chair that you can no longer distinguish where the wood ends, and your own relaxed muscles begin. Every ounce of daily tension, every lingering thought from the distant mainland, and every minor worry about the future has been completely drawn out of your system, systematically dissolved by the slow hypnotic rhythms of this high stone sanctuary. You sit in a state of pure, unadulterated presence, a solitary witness to the flawless mechanical ballet that was jagged cliffs of Eilean Mòr from the jagged Eilean Mòr. The magnificent Fresnel lens above your head executes its timeless, silent rotation that feels grander mathematical majesty, that feels grander than time itself. Every 30 seconds, the brilliant white beam sweeps across the circular chamber, casting its long, elegant shadows in a slow, predictable arc across the curved granite walls. You watch these soft, dark shapes move capite, hat your eyes half closed, your vision beautifully unfocused as the light and shadow blend into a single undulating wave of pure visual tranquility. The repetition has become a part of your own internal biology. Your heart beats in a slow, steady cadence that mirrors the heavy tick-clack of the clockwork escapement, and your lungs expand and contract in perfect harmony with the 30-second breathing of the turning glass. So, there is no urgency here, no rushing current to fight against, and no milestones to achieve. The universe has shrunk down to the absolute perfection of this warm room, a safe, self-contained capsule of light suspended in the middle of an infinite winter night. Through the heavy frosted window panes, the external world has ceased to exist entirely, swallowed up by a sea of thick, undulated fog that presses tightly against the glass. Like a soft, white wall, the vast deep currents and biting, freezing winds has been completely silenced. Reduced to a low, microscopic vibration that hums faintly up through the 2 meters of solid granite beneath your boots, this distant rhythmic thrumming functions in the acoustic landscape of the tower, providing a deep, grounding foundation for the softer melodies of the interior. You listen to the continuous, wet hiss of the pressurized oil lamp, the lazy hydraulic purr of the graphite-greased bronze gears, and the faint, musical trickling of condensation water navigating the internal lead pipes. These sounds do not compete with one another. They interlock with absolute perfection, creating a rich, multi-sensory lullaby that systematically disarms the last remaining analytical defenses of your mind. You let your head loll gently back against the top of the oak chair, your chin tilting upward as your heavy eyelids grow heavier still, fluttering softly against the warm amber glow of the reading lamp. Across the room the principal lightkeeper remains, in his deep undisturbed slumber on the wooden bench, his chest rising and falling in a slow, peaceful rhythm that provides a beautiful, silent reassurance that all is well, that the light is secure, and that it is completely safe for you to let go, wrapped securely within the thick, coarse wool of your Highland sweater. Your skin is perfectly warm, your hands relaxed and open on the wide armrests. The dark green ink in the logbook has long since dried into a permanent matte charcoal record of absolute peace, leaving nothing more to write, nothing more to measure, and nothing more to tend. You feel a profound, wave-like sensation of absolute surrender washing over your senses, a heavy, luxurious lethargy that coaxes your mind to fully step away from the watch, allowing yourself to dissolve into the deep, restorative quietude of the approaching dawn. The long, silent hours of the winter watch are drawing to a natural, magnificent close, as the marine chronometer on the 4 o'clock hour softly marks the approach of the 4 o'clock hour. The deep, absolute blackness of the midnight void has begun to undergo a subtle, miraculous transformation, giving way to the very earliest, microscopic hint of the nautical dawn. Looking through the thick plate glass window panes, you can see that the ink-black sky has softened into a heavy, velvety shade of deep indigo blue, a quiet signalling that the sun is beginning its long, unhurried journey upward. From far beyond the eastern horizon of the North Sea, the freezing fog which has wrapped the granite tower of Eilean Mòr in a dense white cocoon for the past several hours seems to have settled into a state of perfect stillness, its thick vapours hovering motionless over the resting waters far below. Every 30 seconds, the brilliant white beam of the Fresnel lens continues its majestic, mathematical sweep through the dimming air, a faithful heartbeat of light that has never faltered for a single second during your long vigil, keeping its silent promise to the unseen ships navigating the wilderness. The internal sanctuary of the lantern room remains a paradise of absolute, a stark and beautiful contrast to the desolate stone cliffs outside. A stark and maybe soul, the small cast-iron stove has entered its final deepest phase of heat generation, its thick metallic walls radiating a lazy, perfectly cozy and comfortable that keeps the air heckled cozy and podal. The rich, grounded perfume of burning peat, sweet clover honey, and refined mineral oil has thoroughly saturated the room, creating an impenetrable sensory blanket of security that completely isolates you from the freezing winds of the Atlantic night. You allow your hands to relax completely on the wide oak armrests of the high-backed chair, your fingers opening loose in tension or alertness. Of any remaining physical tension or alertness, the heavy, coarse wool of your traditional Highland sweater feels wonderfully substantial against your shoulders, holding the radiating warmth of the hearth directly against your chest as it rises and falls in a slow Machinal-poet cadence, the ancient harpedy that matches the ancient heartbeat of the tower. Across the circular chamber, the principal lightkeeper begins to stir gently on his wooden bench, his deep, rhythmic breathing shifting as his internal clock awakens him to welcome the morning. There is no sudden movement, no sharp sound, and no urgency in his awakening. He moves with the same unhurried, disciplined dignity that defines the entire life of the Northern Lighthouse service. He sits up slowly, rolling his shoulders within his heavy uniform jacket, and looks toward the wide oak desk open under the amber reading lamp. Where the leather amber reading lamp, catching your eye in the soft light, he offers a quiet nodding smile of profound gratitude and understanding, a silent acknowledgement of a watch well kept, and a light perfectly maintained through the darkest hours of the winter night. He stands up, his heavy sea boots making a familiar comforting creak against the timber floorboards as he steps forward to take his place, beside the said central pedestal. Your son silently signalling that your long solitary vigil is successfully complete and that it is finally time for you to rest. You do not stand up immediately. Instead, you let yourself savour the absolute for a few final relief of the transition, for a few final dreamy moments. You look down at the open page of the logbook, where your neat charcoal script stands permanently captured in the textured rag paper, a beautiful, static monument to a night past in perfect mechanical order and peace. The steady, wet hiss of the pressurized oil lamp and the rhythmic click-clack of the clockwork escapement begin to gently recede into the deeper background of your awareness, fading smoothly into a single uniform mechanical hum that sounds exactly like a soft, comforting lullaby designed to carry you away. The faint subterranean thrumming of the ocean waves breaking against the cliffs far below serves as the final, grounding bass note, wrapping around your senses and inviting your mind to completely let go of its last remaining defences. Your heavy eyelids flutter one last time against the warm amber glow of the reading lamp, then close completely, shutting out the familiar geometry of glass, brass and stone. You let your head loll deeply back against the top of the oak chair, your consciousness fully untethered from the world of schedules, modern noise, and daily worries. You are entirely safe, entirely warm, and surrounded by an unbreakable fortress of stone and light. As the first gentle grey light of the morning begins to softly paint the eastern sky, you allow yourself to glide effortlessly down into the deep, dark, and beautifully restorative embrace of an absolute perfect slumber. The sanctuary of the lighthouse remains perfectly still, wrapped in the deep, unchanging peace of the early morning. As your consciousness drifts further and further away into the quiet realm of dreams, the physical reality of the lantern room begins to soften, melting into a distant, comforting hum that lives on the very edge of your awareness. The sharp lines of the granite walls, the gleaming surfaces of the brass instruments, and the vast grid of the glass windows dissolve into a warm, gentle haze of ambient colour, leaving behind only a profound sense of absolute security and rest. The world of deadlines, modern noise and daily burdens has completely vanished, replaced by the timeless, rhythmic order of the high stone tower. In this deep state of tranquility, the individual sounds of your long watch blend together into a single magnificent lullaby perfectly calibrate to sustain your deep, the steady mechanical click-clack of the clockwork escapement, the soft, liquid hiss of the pressurized oil burner, and the microscopic trickling of the condensation water inside the lead pipes create a beautiful, continuous acoustic blanket. Beneath it all, the immense grounding bass note of the Atlantic waves breaking against the cliffs of Eilean Mòr continues to vibrate up through the solid stone, a powerful reminder that you are completely protected within an indestructible fortress. The lightkeeper stands his silent vigil in your place, navigating the transition into the new day, with an unhurried, practiced grace, leaving you with absolutely nothing to tend, nothing to measure, and nothing to worry about. The soft indigo sky outside the glass continues its slow, beautiful transformation, the dark shadows surrendering to the clean, pearlescent grey of the rising dawn. Clean, iridescent grey of the rising dawn. The great Fresnel lens executes its magnificent, silent circle on its cushion of mercury, its brilliant white beams gliding across the resting landscape with absolute mathematical fidelity. Even as you sleep, the light remains active, a faithful guardian shining out into the fading mist to guide the travellers of the sea safely home. You are entirely warm, wrapped securely within the heavy wool of your sweater and the radiating energy of the small iron stove. You are entirely safe, held in the protective embrace of a sanctuary that has withstood the fiercest storms of history. Let go of the final, lingering fragments of thought, surrender completely to the heavy, luxurious warmth of the morning, and rest deeply in the beautiful, undisturbed quietude of a perfect sleep. This narrative is deeply inspired by the historical reality of late Victorian maritime life on isolated Eilean Mòr, meticulously reconstructed from the archives of the Northern Lighthouse Board. It reimagines the profound endurance of an anonymous lightkeeper whose grueling devotion directly protected human life against the chaotic Atlantic night, produced by whispers of centuries. Relax and let the next chapters gently carry you away.